in the role that they played in the residential schools. And this was a historic moment for Canada. Sorry, is there a... Okay. So she really was a leader on that front and just dedicated her life to helping and teaching others. She was a mentor and role model to many people, particularly youth. She was on the Elders Council for the John Howard Society of North Island. I had the privilege of meeting her several times, and the youth just adored her, as everyone around her did. She had a lovely spirit and energy, and she will be very missed, not just in her local community, but across the province and the nation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councillor Morin, for that. And my apologies to those of you that are watching and probably could see us great, but couldn't hear us nearly as well. But what I'm going to do, I believe Councillor Morin, most of what Councillor Morin did was caught by audio. Unfortunately, the audio wasn't functioning before that. So I'm just going to start again by calling the meeting to order for the June 13th City of Courtenay Council meeting. And just starting by respectfully acknowledging the lands in which this meeting is being conducted is the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. And I just want to acknowledge and let people know about Indigenous Peoples Day next Tuesday, June 21st. Across Canada is being celebrated. It's a day to celebrate the rich cultures, traditions, and histories of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people across Canada. And in particular, Comox First Nation has invited our entire community to come celebrate at the Comox territory on Comox Road from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. This will be featuring food, kid zone, dance performances, artisans, information tables, a fundraising auction, drumming, storytelling, and overall, it's going to be a fantastic and amazing day. All of us who are considered settlers on this land can benefit greatly from learning more about how our presence here has impacted Indigenous peoples. We can do this by acknowledging Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of these lands. We can learn about their rich history and culture and reflect about how we might be contributing to or benefiting from the colonial process in our society. Our council is deeply committed to strengthening our relationship with Comox First Nation, on whose unceded territory we reside, as well as under other Indigenous peoples living on these lands. I'm proud the City of Courtenay has adopted the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People in 2020 and has embedded principles of reconciliation as a cardinal direction throughout our new OCP, or Official Community Plan, that will be going to public hearing next Monday, June 20th. In Courtenay's updated OCP, the city commits to incorporating Indigenous peoples into its work and decision-making process, and to providing equitable and inclusive services that benefit Indigenous people. The city will seek guidance from Indigenous partners to see how this commitment can be brought into a reality. We look forward to continuing this dialogue with Comox First Nation and all Indigenous peoples in our community with great respect and gratitude. And I encourage everyone to come and celebrate with Comox First Nation on June 21st. And with that, thank you, Wendy, for your comment. Did you want to jump in?
Just in light of was the audio working? Or
I think the audio started when you started.
Okay. But I just wanted to make sure that that it was emphasized that Alberta Billy was actually one of the people that influenced the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and so was really quite made quite an impact. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Councillor Morin. I appreciate that. And Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge the passing of local resident Bob McQuillan on June the 7th. Bob resided in the Comox Valley since 1979 and made many contributions to our community, served on school board for a number of years, was an active Rotarian, helped to found Nautical Days in Comox, and played a significant role in Courtenay's centennial contributions. And take this opportunity to honor his service and to pass along our condolence to his family and friends on this sad occasion. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councillor Hillian. And I did have the pleasure and honor of meeting Bob in my Rotary Club and worked with him for many years, and he'll be sorely missed, but the work that he did in our community will be echoed on for generations. And on that note, I just want to acknowledge and thank everybody who came out on Saturday to celebrate the life of former city employee Randy Witcher, and the dedication of the Sid Williams Plaza and renaming to the Randy Witcher Plaza. And again, another amazing community member, Rotarian, who worked on so many projects again that are going to impact our community positively for generations to come. And with that, Councillor McCullough.
Yeah, finally, I'd like to just acknowledge that June 18th is National Day of the Garden, and 2022 is the year of the garden. The city of Courtenay is committed to being a garden-friendly city, supporting the development of its garden culture, and is proud to sponsor the annual Mile of Flowers community plant-in event.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that, Councillor McCollum. And are there any introductions of late items? Seeing none. Moving along, the adoption of minutes from May 30th. Excellent. Are there any errors or omission in the minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And delegations. We have the plaque request from the Hiram Lodge and the Masonic Temple Society. And we have a very familiar looking person. If you just, you know exactly what you're doing. There we go. And the microphone is passed over to you. And
thank you, Mayor Wells. Thank you, Council, for hearing this request. We, of course, have been here in the Valley, established in 1891, so 132 years next year. And we've been in our current location on 5th Street since 1923. Our first meeting was held in January of 1923. It'll be 100 years in that location next January, next year. We'll be celebrating that. It's also the 150th celebration in for Masonry in British Columbia. The Grand Lodge of British Columbia and Yukon was celebrating that last year. Of course, it was a little difficult to celebrate it with COVID. All those things have made us wonder if and ask your permission to put a bronze plaque in front of our lodge. This is to commemorate our establishment in 1891 and also direct people to the fact that Hiram Lodge is number 14 on the register of the Grand Lodge of British Columbia and Yukon. We want to keep it in, although it's separate from the plaques that you currently have on 5th Street, we'd like to keep it to the same type of format instead of an oval or round. We noticed that your plaques are currently 10 inches by 16. We'd like to just keep this 10-inch circular. We did go through Eric Erickson, and he said because it's outside of his purview to bring it to you. As you know, we've been very active in the community. We've had a number of masters who've been community leaders. Bridges, Cliff, McPhee are names that line our halls as you go into our and walk up our stairs. There's over 120 different members of the community over the last 130 years who have been masters of our lodge, and almost all of them have been active in some way within the community. We also have concordant bodies, which also use the facility and are part of the Masonic group, which are the Shrine Club, the Eastern Star, which is our sorority. And we also have a Comox Lodge meets at our lodge as well. I know that there may be some questions, so we came here today not only to ask your permission, but to make sure that we answered any questions you might have.
Excellent. Thanks so much, John. I do appreciate it. And I have visited at your invitation, so I do again acknowledge that very much. And I'll look out to our councillors to see if there's any questions. I see Councillor Theos had his hand ready to go. There we go.
Hi, John. Yeah, no, this to me is a suitable idea and makes sense what you're wanting to bring forward. May have missed it. Did you have a diagram or picture of the thought that of the
Oh, you'll have to push the button, and you don't have to turn your mic off. You get to keep yours on. Oh, you've just turned yourself off.
There we go. I'm back on again.
There we go. Okay, well.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
The viewing public is very simple. It is just a square and compass with the letter G in the middle, which indicates the grand architect of the universe. It says established 1891 across the bottom, and it says Hiram Lodge number 14 Ancient, Free, and Accepted Masons, AFNAM. We wanted to keep it simple because people can always, contact us for more further information. Thank you, Matt.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, John, for the presentation. Two things. First of all, you mentioned Eric Erickson, and you would have spoken to him because of his involvement with the Walk of Fame Committee, which places plaques on the street to acknowledge residents. And I just wanted to put that on the record for those who might not be aware. And I may as well ask you the question. The Masons do a lot of incredible work, but they're also the subject of a lot of mythology, secret society and all that. They appear in all sorts of literature and references. I wonder if you want to just reassure us that there aren't any, isn't any skullduggery going on, conjuring up ancient demons or anything like that? Building pyramids in the city, that type of thing.
I can assure you that there is no skullduggery. Freemasonry openly, obviously, we're not a secret society because we have a very large square and compass on our sign. If you're sitting at Hot Chocolates, you can see it from across the road. But we do have rites and rituals, and we do have things that we do. And all of it is to try to encourage morality through allegories and symbols so that we have a system of making good men into better men. We focus on trying to encourage our members to be parts of our community and society as a whole, to be a good influence for the community at large.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Doug.
And one of the questions, and sorry, it may have been asked, I was dealing with a couple other things here, but one of the things that I wondered is if we put it in the sidewalk, that's one thing, but given that there's a building there, is there a reason why we wouldn't want the plaque to be on the building?
Actually, we have the 150th celebration has provided us with a plaque to honor that date. It's going to go on the wall, and it has a UPC, not a UPC, but the
QR code?
thank you, the QR.
That's what I'm here for.
Boy, do I appreciate it. You're not a technical guy or chance, are you?
Not
Anyhow,
anymore.
the QR code, which will take people to a brief history about Hiram Lodge in particular and the Grand Lodge of BC in general. And it highlights some of the things that I discussed here today in the presentation. But yes, we wanted to just direct people because a lot of people's eyes are on the ground. And we noticed what you're doing is important to the community, and it reflects the history of the community, the rich, vibrant characters that have been part of our community. And we wanted to be a part of that. It's not that we wanted to take away from that, we wanted to add to it. And that's why we're requesting to be in the ground, similar to what you've got going on already. People are already looking down and reading these things. We'd like to be part of that.
Excellent. Okay. I appreciate that. I don't see any further questions or comments. So as you may or may not know, we don't generally make decisions the day of a delegation, but it will be coming back to council and we'll make a deliberation at that time.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. All right. And next we have Student Housing Commons Product at North Island College. And it looks like Diane's running for the mic there. So welcome, Diane, and I'll pass it over to you. I think you've got a PowerPoint that's going to be coming up here shortly. And over to you.
Great. Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. Lovely to see you this afternoon. I'm Diane Nogler. I'm North Island College's Director of Future Students and Community Engagement. And thank you for having our delegation today on behalf of the college to offer you an update on our student housing commons and our college planning overall. With me today are Chris Udi, our Director of Capital Projects, Christiana Weens, our Director of Public Affairs and Communication, and Danielle Hoogland, our Community Engagement Liaison. I'm pretty excited to have found the clicker here. Thank you, Adriana. So all of us at NIC work really hard on our commitment to be embedded in the community and create a sense of home for learners and employees alike across the region we serve. Our new institutional strategic plan, Build 2026, is now 1 year old. And in this plan, we looked at the college and at our role holistically. And we used architecture for our framework, which is displayed in this slide. Continuing that home theme. A key element of our community impact under this plan is going to be the new student housing commons, which is on slide 3, and I'm hopeful that I'll get there. You know, Bob, you've probably found this, if you click the same thing several times.
Absolutely. Just keep clicking it. And then sometimes if the printer's not working, I mean, yeah, maybe it'll print 30 copies, but it'll eventually work.
So funding for this project was announced in February of this year, and many of you were able to come to campus in March and celebrate with us. Student housing at our Comox Valley campus on Ryan Road will provide living and learning space through 217 beds, including 20 in a dedicated building for student-led families. Our lease lengths and our intakes are going to be designed to support our programming. So if you're a student taking a program delivered at the Comox Valley campus, you can apply for student housing, and we will have intakes coordinated with our programming. So we'll be able to serve shorter term rentals than the traditional academic year, as well as the academic year. And we're very excited about that. This slide gives you a pretty comprehensive overview of the funding and the program mix at the campus overall. We're at an exciting point in our timeline. Maybe not as exciting as the funding announcement, but pretty darn exciting. We are in the early stages of the RFP process with 3 qualified proponents. And we've sent our additional specs out to them, and we'll be starting meetings with those proponents this month, hoping for an announcement in late September about the successful design build firm. We are planning for a soft opening for students in the facility in fall 2024. And a full opening in 2025 as the construction timeline continues and makes possible. The site location is really, really interesting to us, and I hope interesting to the community. The student housing commons will really change campus life at the Comox Valley campus, and I think it's also going to change how the community sees us. The commons will be fairly visible located along Ryan Road near the Ryan and Lerwick intersection. One of the things that we've been finding out as we talk to community about the project is so many of us at the college aren't mindful of the aquatic center traffic in quite the same way as the community is. There are so many community members who come along Lerwick to go to the aquatic center and sort of see the college over there. Housing is going to bring quite a few new individuals through our Ryan Road entrance and showcase the college in a different way. And so it is our hope, as the location gets sited and the construction begins, that many of you and many other community members will be able to come to campus and see this housing under construction. As part of the business case that was approved and funded by the province, we've committed to access to education, to community enhancement and sustainability, and certainly emphasizing the contribution of the project to the local economy. And the project is based on working to ensure that the housing commons is a culturally safe and responsive community. Given the history of residential schooling and the calls of the Truth and Reconciliation Commitment to take on housing now as a publicly funded British Columbia institution requires a responsibility and a dialogue with First Nations that we are taking seriously, from the development of the business case through to the operation of the facility. We have a formative dialogue with Comox First Nation, and that dialogue has shaped our housing plans from the development of the business case to operations, as I said, and there is a KFN representation on our design build selection committee, and their perspectives will inform Student Housing Commons operation. And we'll be updating Comox First Nation similarly as to how we hope to update you as well throughout the project. Attention to environmental sustainability is also a key pillar of the business case, and the project will feature mass timber in construction to offset the carbon footprint, meet step 4 provincial energy requirements, and promote an active community through proximity to learning, groceries, and services. And we'll strive to maintain what we feel is an urban forest feel on campus. There'll be so many more students who will be using all the services and business amenities at that Ryan and Lerwick intersection. It will have a major impact on commerce and on traffic, and even where our students are employed as the housing common takes off. We'll be looking at many other active and passive operational possibilities, and these will be developed as we learn more about the successful building design. And community consultation is key. You'll be hearing a lot more about the project after our contractor is selected in the early fall. And we certainly hope we'll see you on campus as we open the campus up to opportunities for site viewing and site participation. We're prepared today to talk a little more about our design build process for those of you who might like to learn more about that, although I think this council is probably fairly familiar with how all that goes. And we wanted to just take a second to talk about our broader college planning as well. Student housing is really big for us, but there's even more going on our Comox Valley campus and across the college. In particular, the college is moving with support of the provincial government to expand our seats in early childhood care. And so we expect to have 75 new seats in early childhood care and education, and are pursuing further funding for an early child care center of excellence on the Comox Valley campus in cooperation with the Beaufort Child Care Society. I probably don't have that name correct. Sorry, Beaufort. And we are a 4-campus operation plus a learning center in Ucluelet. So our 5-year capital plan has improvements that are vitally necessary planned across all our campus regions. And we're vigorously pursuing funding for those, student housing being the project for which we have announced funding right now. So I'm mindful of my 10-minute time. I really just wanted to update everyone on what we think is a really great story, not just for the college, but for the community and hopefully for the region. You know, we try and offer the programming that our communities need at the locations in which they need it, but that's not always possible. And housing is going to allow us to serve our region better as well as our locality. So thank you for your time, and we're here for any questions you might have.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Diane, for the presentation. And again, I think it needs to be recognized. This wasn't a quick, easy thing. I know you had that timeline there, but I do recall having similar conversations with Lou Dryden many years ago with John Bowman and now with Lisa. So I know it's a total commit from staff to get it to this point. And again, many thanks to the province as well. So I'm looking around, but it looks like our council, Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. We can't let them get away without at least one question. Well, Diane, I'm intrigued to know what the Director of Future Students involves. But my real question is, and I should also thank you for your involvement in Courtney's official community plan advisory process. Thank you. Do you have a sense of where students currently live in the community? I know that the residences that are built for student housing will encompass new students, but presumably you have a picture of where the students who currently rely on housing in the community, if they're not from here and still live with their families, where they live, the distribution of those who live in their own apartments versus room and board situations. Part of the reason I'm interested is because this is obviously a long anticipated development that I think we're all overjoyed to see. But we hope, among other things, that it makes some impact on opening up some of those current housing opportunities that may be taken up by students that would become available to others in need.
Thanks, Councillor. It's a really good question, and I don't have an exhaustive or complete answer because we don't require that information for our purposes, but we can do postal code analysis, and we can see that, and we can survey our students. So we know that 53% of students currently at the Comox Valley campus, they come from within our broader region, but they weren't located in the Comox Valley region when they put the application in. So that is largely island centric and next province centric, and then it thins out from there. So that is a great burden on the rental housing supply for this region. So even if our student profile didn't change at all, the fact of having 217 beds in this community would make a difference in the rental market. We know anecdotally that a number of our students, both domestic and international students, cohabitate in fairly tight quarters in the 1 and 2 bedroom apartments that are available across the region. We know that they like to locate as proximal to campus as they can, but rents being what they have been in the last few years, they've stretched further and further out as their incomes and what it costs to go to school really make possible. So we know that 49% of our students who attend programs in this region rent, but I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly where they rent. So we can't extrapolate too much from there. And we know in the survey we did to build this business case that 62% of students, and this is as Mayor Bob gestured to 3.5 years ago, said they had difficulty finding rentals in the Comox Valley. And I think we all know that that can only be a much bigger number now. So we really, we're working with, we're sitting in on the Comox Valley Coalition to End Homelessness meetings, Danielle and myself, for the past several months. We're reaching out to Habitat for Humanity. I think there are a lot of partnership opportunities available in the both for-profit and nonprofit sectors here that are supporting making meaningful inroads on the housing crisis. We would certainly like to help our students who gain professional accreditation and skills stay in the Valley, be employed in the Valley, and be able to rent and thrive in the Valley. And hopefully this is a launch pad for those learners to become the professionals that will help us move forward together. So I think that's the best I know right now. So
Thanks very much. I really appreciate that. I also appreciate your earlier comments about the impact on commerce and the business community in the area. And I wish you all the very best, you and your colleagues, as you work through this much needed project. Thank you.
And I think the other question was around the future students, which I think you alluded to with the daycare spaces and early childhood education. So that's the future students, I assume, part of it. We also have a question from Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, you kind of stole my thunder there, but I was curious whether with the expanded childcare, whether there's been any commitment to have more spots in the early childhood program for people to look after all those kiddos. And I also want to say I was really excited to see the solar panels and the food gardens. I saw some cabbage and stuff growing there, I'm sure, you know, Brussels sprouts or something. But yeah, I'm hoping that maybe this will transfer to some more spots in the program as well to get more people trained. Thanks.
Thank you, Wendy. That's a great question because it makes me able to bring Chris up. So I think it's important to share the load here. I think if we went back to that slide, which I'm not sure that we can, Adriana, are we able to? And oh, now I have the power. Great. you want to talk about that a little bit?
Okay, so the question was, just so I'm very clear, whether we're going to have obligated space for funding, so funding for the childcare or specific to, oh, for the ECC program seats, yeah. Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, so the ECC programming, I know that the faculty are having conversation with the ministry around further funding to augment, and part of this bill, the childcare is the first floor. ECC programming will be on top, obviously adding to the capacity of North Mountain College to offer that programming. I think that answers your question.
yeah, I think the plan, it's interesting when, because it's more than one ministry, right? So it's child and family, but it's also post-secondary. And so we would be putting forward a center of excellence proposal, and those discussions are already underway. And I think, can you talk about the second level of funding you're looking for?
Yeah, so the second level funding, we've received $3 million currently from Ministry of Children and Families for the childcare center. We're looking for the balance of about $6 million for the second floor. That'll come from the Ministry of Advanced Ed, sorry. We've received notional approval for that. We're in the process of developing the indicative design and the business case to support that ask from ministry.
Thanks, Councillor Warren. And sorry, your microphone got turned off there because there was a limit of how many people would speak. I think I fixed it now, hopefully. But if it happens again, just let me know. And again, thanks so much for the presentation today. A long time coming. So we're really excited to see how that's not only going to impact the college, obviously, but I think it's going to have such a tremendous impact on our community. So thanks to everybody who's been working so hard on this. And with that, next we have a Comox Valley Sewer Conveyance Project update from the Comox Valley Regional District. And we have Russell Dyson, the CAO, and Chris LaRose, Senior Manager of Water and Wastewater Services. I'm doing a better job of introducing people. I lacked that earlier on tonight, but over to you, Russell.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Council, staff, and members of the public. You have a phenomenal meeting place here. A sign of regional collaboration, which has been ongoing and something that we're talking to you about today. And that is probably the most exciting topic in local government, sewage conveyance. My name is Russell Dyson. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer, and I'm here with Chris LaRose, Senior Manager of Water and Wastewater. We will do a tag team presentation to update you on the sewage conveyance project and the timeline and what to expect in terms of works in the next little while. But we'll also talk to you first a little bit about the past and how we got here. And I just want to acknowledge and thank all of you that have been commissioners on past and present sewage commissions, because much of the time and effort that you've taken, along with your colleagues in the town of Comox and the Department of National Defence, has gone into the key decisions on advancing this project forward. We're also very grateful for the support that we get from your municipal staff that meet as an advisory capacity to help guide us on the recommendations that we bring forward to the Sewage Commission. And of course, our partners in the community, Comox First Nations in particular, and the businesses and community members that use our services and rely on us. So just sending out a shout out of thanks. Why is this an important project? I think most of you are aware of the background, but just as a bit of a reminder, the project principally came about with the need to replace aging infrastructure, and in particular, our sewage conveyance that runs along the foreshore in Willamar Bluff. As you're all aware, it is prone to erosion and wave action from storms and other things. The sewage conveyance mains themselves have been exposed as a result of that. And should they ever collapse or break, it would be catastrophic in terms of raw sewage being forced into the waters of Bain Sound and surrounding environments. But it's not just about that. It's, as I say, about aging infrastructure. We need to upgrade our pump stations that push that sewage effluent to our good quality treatment works in the Lazo area. And we also have become aware that other components or other conveyance mains are susceptible to damage, those on Dyke Road, just the way that they are constructed. And the fact that they are exposed to sewage makes them prone to catastrophic failure as well. So the time is now. We need to replace this infrastructure. But so the project itself, I've really explained what it's about in a nutshell in terms of conveyance mains and pump stations. It's urgent requirement to be replaced. It's about protecting the Bain Sound, the estuary, but it's also providing for the businesses, the institutions of our community, as well as our residents, because North Island College, the hospital, our residents, and everything else rely on sewage treatment. And we're here for that after it's collected by the municipalities. And principally what we are doing now is we're moving those pipes that were once located along the foreshore. The foreshore is the most convenient way and best engineering solution because the pipes and the sewage is going along an even grade at or above sea level, as opposed to going over land. But we know now that that is not an acceptable way of locating this infrastructure, and we need to move it upland. But that means lots of challenges because pipes will be at a higher elevation, pumps will need to be bigger, and we will be burning more energy to get sewage to the treatment plant. But we're now through a long, prolonged process of engagement and planning, set to start construction in spring of 2023. And Chris is going to outline to you the timelines and the details a little more. But just again, how we got to here to where we are today, we've had several different engagements. It was the decision of the Sewage Commission to go through an extensive liquid waste management plan to vet over 20 different options of how to treat and convey our sewage. Those options were narrowed down. All of these were engaged in a PACTAC, a public advisory and a technical advisory committee that helped inform us, representing the various different interests within our community, be it the businesses, the environmental community, neighbors that would be affected by the construction. We held a series of different workshops and open houses throughout the community to engage with the public. And basically this slide kind of summarizes the level of extent. I really also want to give a shout out to the team that works behind Chris and I for supporting this during a pandemic. The pandemic enabled us actually to do things differently. And one of those things is conducting workshops in a online format. Why is that good? Well, it enables anybody to participate from their living room as opposed to coming to a community hall to participate in a workshop. It enables the questions that are asked by every individual to be recorded and our answers to be provided by everybody that participates. And then it enables us to put that online so it's there for a record forever. Now, public open houses are important and we performed those when and as we could, and that allowed for direct dialogue and engagement, which is important too. But one silver lining of the pandemic is it enabled us to go down that road of providing the variety of public engagement, and it worked well. So this slide will talk to you about the route in more particular detail, and I'll pass it on to Chris LaRose, and then I'll follow up with a few other items. But Chris will talk to you about the details of the conveyance line and the route to be constructed.
Thanks, Russell, and good afternoon, everyone. So Russell's done a great job of getting up to speed about why we've done or how we've gotten here and what we're doing. So I'll update you now on what we're going to be delivering over the coming years. There's been a whole lot of additional thought, design, and analysis since the liquid waste management planning process completed on this component, at least early last year, resulting in some scope optimization, which I'll update you on. So this slide shows the entire alignment of the project from west to east. I'll walk you through the highlights before diving into some details of the specific sections on the next 3 slides. So while the project is definitely primarily driven by the environmental risk along Willamore Bluffs, which is shown at the bottom right of the screen, facing southeast, or almost directly south. As Russell mentioned, we're also struggling with other issues with the system that will be addressed by this project. Pump station capacity is a big one. So the Courtenay Pump Station and the Comox Pump Station are both nearing or at capacity. And with a growing community and also growing impacts from the local impacts from climate change, those are a significant concern. And the planning and assessment process, I've also highlighted weaknesses in our existing pipes, which just really underline the need to get that resolved as soon as possible. So as a result, this project is effectively delivering a complete replacement of or a major upgrade of our major trunk kind of conveyance from the two core communities to the treatment plant. Replacement of the entire 10-kilometer force main that Russell described along the foreshore and replacing it with an overland route at a total estimated cost of approximately $82 million. So the project's being delivered in two contracts. The town crossing, so it's approximately 3.5 kilometers of cut and cover installation right through the downtown core of the town, will be delivered via a design bid build, which is kind of a traditional project delivery method around here. But the rest of the project, everything outside of the town, with the exception of the Comox pump station upgrade, will be done via design build, which is considered a progressive project delivery method, where which involves a lot more opportunities for collaboration with the design build team. And that was considered particularly important for this project, where we need to replace the Courtney pump station, replace and then major upgrade to the Comox station, while maintaining operations of those critical facilities and ensuring we don't have any interruption of service to the community. So while the total anticipated capital cost of this project is about 30% lower than the Comox Valley Water Treatment Project, which was just completed successfully last year, in contrast with that the greenfield nature of that project, which had very little direct overlap and impact to the community, this project is significantly more complicated. We've got the interaction with the Agricultural Land Commission, the crossing of KFN IR1, the 3.5 kilometers of impact to the town of Comox, a tunneled section underneath Lazo Hill that we need to be very, very cognizant and cautious of potential impacts to groundwater wells in that area, a crossing of the Lazo Marsh before connecting to the treatment plant. And just in case you're thinking we've spared the city from any direct impacts from this project, I'll get to the traffic impacts on a later slide. So zeroing in a little bit on the west component of the alignment. So as I highlighted, we're beginning with we've opted for a complete replacement of the existing Courtney pump station for a range of factors, but the two that really rose to the top were concerns about the seismic performance of that facility. Just how would it respond to a major earthquake? We want it to be left standing and operational, so that the community, to take that one off the list of things the community needs to worry about, after a major seismic event. We also want it to be resilient to the local effects of climate change. We've recently completed coastal floodplain mapping, so we know how high the local floodwaters are likely to reach through a combination of storm surge and sea level rise. We want this facility to be able to withstand that and not get drowned. So moving east from there, we've got a section of cut and cover along Comox Road, which will have significant traffic impacts. We're hoping to keep that to a minimum of one lane closure, or a minimum of one lane of traffic at all times. And then at Farmview Road, we're proposing to leave Comox Road, largely to avoid the significant archaeologically sensitive areas stretching from there over to IR1, but that will also have a significant beneficial impact on traffic impacts. So we're working closely with the Agricultural Land Commission for both the Courtney pump station siting and that alternate route through to the west side of IR1. At that point, we'll come back down to the highway, to the Comox Road, and we will work. We've spent a lot of time assessing how best to cross that ancient village site with minimal impact to the KFN cultural heritage site. So what we've opted for there is kind of an innovative approach where we'll actually undertake a surface, likely some arrangement to make use of the existing trench, so we're not doubling up and disturbing a as of yet undisturbed section of Midden to avoid any further impacts. And then just highlighted in the two circles there, the project will include a replacement of the Comox First Nation pump station. And then the second one is just that interface point between the two contracts that I mentioned. So next up is the central component of the project. Most of this being delivered via the design bid build that I mentioned. And before I get into those details, I just ask Russell to come up and see a few comments. Sorry, Russell.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as Chris has alluded to, you can imagine threading this very large sewer conveyance through a town that has been developed with narrow streets and existing infrastructure. I just wish to commend the town of Comox and their staff for working so closely with us to figure this out, because we could go in and do all of our work and tear up the streets and get it done and repair the infrastructure. But then the town of Comox has a host of other projects on the go. And so what we've done is really roll up our sleeves to see how we might collaborate and deliver a variety of projects all as one. And that would be to conclude some of the street works that the town is proposing, whereby they will fund the works, they will do the design for the works, but it will be blended into one project, so that when we go to tear up the streets and put in the conveyance line, we will also conclude the addition of traffic signals and other site improvements. So we're working on the fine details of this. An agreement will be struck between both the town and ourselves. It will be reviewed by the Sewage Commission and the advisory and your staff as well. But I think this is what the public wants out of us as local governments, to try and bring these things together, as opposed to seeing an extended construction period and disruption to their services or otherwise. It means for a much more intense project. It means for more risk and responsibility assumed by us, but the town is there to ensure that they are supporting the project, paying the costs for their infrastructure or otherwise. So just wanted to let you kind of know about that kind of framework for this portion of the project. And now Chris will outline some of the details of how the conveyance line will be threaded through and the improvements to be made.
Thanks, Russell. So the pipe alignment across the town of Comox has stayed largely the same since the liquid waste management planning process kind of terminated on this component last February 2021, with two exceptions. The first one being the shift away from horizontal directional drilling under Comox Hill. So one of the key kind of challenges for this project going into it was shifting away from the intertidal zone, where it's flat, almost entire way to the treatment plant. Going to overland, we have to deal with the heights of land. So there's two heights of land, one being Comox Hill and the other one being Lazo Hill, or otherwise also known as Knob Hill. So initially we had planned to, in order to keep that hydraulic grade line of the pipe to a tolerable level, had planned to cut through that section. Subsequent analysis indicated there wasn't much benefit to that, and we've reverted back to cut and cover across over Comox Hill. The other change is flipping from Comox Road, so from Rodello, which is the second circle from the left. That's Rodello near the St. Joe's Hospital site, all the way over to Ellis. We had planned to follow Comox Road. Through subsequent work with the town, we found an opportunity to shift the location to Beaufort Avenue, which will reduce the traffic impact to businesses and communities. Otherwise, the alignment remains the same. And so those opportunities for synergies between this project delivery and the towns. So we've listed 5 here. And these are the 5 major surface works that are being proposed to being delivered via a single contract. So there's 2 roundabouts. Those are the 2 circles on the left, one at Glacier View Drive, another one at Rodello. So both of those have been long since planned by the town, and we've seen an opportunity to deliver them now, and thereby reducing the cumulative impact to the community. And then in the middle, that rectangle is a section of Beaufort between Church Street and Norden that will see a complete streets rehabilitation to their current standards. And then on the bottom, kind of just to the right of Marina Park, you can see that little off red section there. That's just highlighting a piece of force main that will be installed up Jane Place from the Comox pump station. And then up on the right of the screen along Balmoral, 2 sections that will see rehabilitation as it delivered as part of this project. And then a little section up Torrance as well. So the details about exactly what will be delivered, how it will be delivered, and a whole host of other details governing the delivery of the project and the relationship between the town and the CVRD through delivery of the project are being laid out in a project agreement that's now in draft form and under review by town staff. So the agreement is critical to the smooth delivery of the project to minimize the opportunities for dispute between the town and the CVRD during the project delivery, and it acknowledges the major impact that the project is having on the town, both residents and businesses through delivery of the project, but also long-term through the presence of that 1 meter diameter pipe through the 3.5 kilometers of their roadways, which will be, which will form a legitimate constraint on their ability to site and upgrade infrastructure along that route. So once the CVRD and town staff and legal counsel on both sides are happy with the document, it will come through the sewer advisory prior to commission and town council review and approval. So moving east to the Lazo Hill alignment. So at the very left of that diagram is the Torrance Road, so just at the town boundary. So we've opted to cut under the height of land here using a horizontal directional drill technology, which is a form of tunneling. And so that'll stretch 1.3 kilometers from Torrance and Lazo over to Moreland, where it will surface and then pass through cut and cover installation across Lazo Marsh to the treatment plant. One of the key other key changes to the alignment here is that we've actually managed to flip the laydown of that horizontal directional drilled pipe from the west side over to the east to avoid that further impact to the town. So we found a way to kind of lay that pipe down Moreland across the marsh through the treatment plant location down to Curtis Road before it's drawn through Lazo Hill. And finally, my final slide, a bit of a project timeline. So with us now in spring 2022, in April, we had an update on the liquid waste management planning process and the project at two community events, which went well. This summer, we'll be focusing on stakeholder engagement for traffic management. So this is, as I mentioned on an earlier slide, and throughout, mitigation of traffic impacts is one of our biggest priorities for the project. We see some significant potential, if not done right, if not coordinated properly, if not communicated properly, strong potential for a negative impact to the community. So we're doing everything we can as early as we can to ensure that we mitigate those risks. So we've convened an interjurisdictional working group to make sure that we're working together with other local governments and other stakeholders to ensure that there aren't cumulative effects, and also to learn from lessons learned. So for example, we've gained some excellent insight from City of Courtenay staff through delivery of the 5th Street Bridge project. As a result of those conversations, we've actually engaged the same consultant at Urban Systems to help us develop a traffic management strategy, which addresses and incorporates some of those lessons learned. Also this summer, we'll be focusing on that project agreement, hoping to have that approved by the end of the summer. Also targeted engagement with key stakeholder groups. We just met recently with the Comox BIA. We hope to do so with the Downtown Courtenay BIA, as well as the Chamber of Commerce, to make sure that we're engaging with all those key stakeholders to develop that key document. And then finally, our procurement processes will be culminating this winter with selection of the 2 contractors. And then they will receive that traffic management strategy and use that to guide their traffic management plans, which will really be the meat of how this is coordinated with the public. And then, yeah, we're expecting construction to start in early 2023, with completion estimated towards the end of 24. So a lot of information, but pass you over to Russell with a couple more slides.
Thank you very much, Chris. And we're almost there and we'll be available for questions. And one other topic dealing with sewer is services to the south. And Sewer Extension South project is about providing access to the treatment works for the existing communities of Royston, Union Bay, as well as Comox First Nation. It was an integral part of the community benefit agreement that was signed through the Sewage Commission and Comox First Nation that the sewer service would be provided to them, and they need the partnership of the existing community as well as Union Bay Estates to make it happen. Why is this important? Well, over 50% of the shellfish industry of the province of BC is centered around Bain Sound. Bain Sound depends on clean, clear waters in order to produce the best quality of food for the world. And unfortunately, a community that was subdivided and created a century ago without much consideration to the capacity of those lots to support services has resulted, and on poor soils, has resulted in failing septic systems. We wouldn't do that today, but it's something that we have on our plate to try and address now. The regional district has been at this for over 20 years with various different scenarios and outcomes. We've attempted to undertake a liquid waste management plan to arrive at a solution. 2 referendums have been held and they failed. And why is it important? Well, not only is it about the economy, it's our reputation, it's about the environment, it's about ensuring that adequate services are provided, and it's about reconciliation and working with Comox First Nation. Why am I mentioning this tonight? The next steps for this project are to seek a resolution from each of the councils, the town of Comox and the city of Courtenay. A bylaw amendment is required to include only those areas to be serviced within electoral area A into the service, and that requires a council resolution. So I think you might have a correspondence on your agenda tonight. At some point, we are asking for a council resolution. If you want any more information on that, we're available to help and support you, and we hope for that support to move this project forward. The map that I've attached here includes in the color bluish blue. It shows a conveyance pipe that would go from Union Bay to the siphon in Courtenay. That would be the responsibility of electoral area A, Comox First Nation Union Bay Estates to fund. Grant funding has been applied for that would apply to the existing residents. It also includes a series of pump stations in order to move the sewage that way. Chris LaRose was very much a part of the project and analysis to ensure that there is capacity in the sewage treatment plant that would enable this without compromising access for the city and the town, and that is the case. And also we see benefits to the service because those residents will be paying CICCs. They've already paid $500,000 into capital works that have benefited the Sewage Commission and its advancement of improvements. And so the bottom line in sharing this responsibility and resource is a good thing. So that's the end of our presentation. We thank you very much for your time, and both Chris and I are available for any questions that you might have.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Russell and Chris. That was great. And while I wait for the lights to start blinking here with questions, maybe if you just want to define CICC, I believe that's sort of like a latecomer fee.
Yeah, so a CICC is like a development cost charge. It's a capital investment charge or something to that effect. Basically, all new connections to the existing works pay a fee. That fee is determined by an engineering study that identifies the capital works that are going to be added to the system to ensure that new connections to the system pay their fair share of those capital works in the future. Yes.
Excellent, thanks. And I do recall, I believe it was shortly after the election in 2014, letters going out to folks in Croteau Beach about pump station number 2, I think it was called. Be named for a good song maybe, but I think that what we have before us right now is a more holistic and really something that's meant to last generations and not just be sort of that cheapest quick fix. So I do appreciate the amount of time both the Sewage Commission as well as staff have taken to get things where we are right now. And to a former chair of the Sewer Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it very much. Thank you both Russell and Chris for the very well put forward presentation and detailed. This is a significant project, as you mentioned, nearly $85 million. Being above ground, I'm curious to know the life cycle, because I would imagine maintaining a pipe of this significance above ground, is going to be quite costly. And secondly, if it's not too much to ask, just about the significant loan that would be taken out. Is there a locked-in rate currently for interest rate? Because it's been fairly fluid over the last few months, and it looks like it's going in an upward trend. So thank you very kindly.
I'll answer your second question, and then I'll pass it on to Chris to answer the first. And that is, so yes, there's a combination of borrowing and reserves that will be paying for the project. The interest rate is not locked in until we actually borrow the money. So that will be sometime into the construction of the project. And we went to the public in an alternative approval process a number of months ago. That gave us the approval or the basis upon which we can borrow that money. And so Municipal Finance Authority, as the lender to local government, has the finest of all rates for us. We've certainly calculated the risk associated with the project in terms of the capacity or the potential for those rates to change and to obviously be on the increase in the next little while. But all of that said and done, financial analysis was provided for the project. We also benefited from your CFO of the past, Jennifer, as well as Clive from the town in helping establish the strategy, and that would be to borrow the money over 30 years. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the borrowing question. I'll just pass it on to Chris about life cycle.
Thanks, Russell. And thanks for the question. Yeah. So coming out of that 2014, 2015, 2016 Comox 2 project experience, one of the key takeaways from that consultative process and that analysis was that we really needed a bigger emphasis on life cycle costs. It's not just about how much it's going to cost up front. We really should be looking at the overall life cycle costs. So when we walked through the analysis with the liquid waste management planning process, we assessed 10 different options on the basis of on a combination of capital and life cycle costs, as well as a number of other factors. But yeah, it has been a strong focus, and that's one of the reasons we ended up with a tunneled option, is to help reduce and minimize those long-term life cycle costs of pumping, which are the single biggest line item for a conveyance system like this, is that energy cost for pumping the wastewater. So that tunneled section through Lazo Hill will help to minimize those costs. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks. Oh, did you have another question, Councillor? You just have to push your magic button. Thank you, Councillor Theos.
With that life cycle, are we looking at roughly 25 years for most of this kind of work, or is this a 40-year project for most of the pipes that are going in there?
Yeah, so in terms of longevity, a system like this has a range of components with different expected lifespans. So starting with the biggest piece first, so the pipe is expected to have an 80 to 100 year lifespan. In terms of comparing what we will be installing versus what's in the ground right now, vastly different. This is a high density polyethylene pipe. It's butt welded, so it'll effectively be a single piece of pipe, not the old bell and spigot joint type of approach. So much higher resiliency to seismic forces. So that's the pipe. The pump station structures themselves, similar lifespan, 130 years. And then the pumps and HVAC have lesser, so they're more in the 30 to 40 year life cycle replacement.
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down, Chris. That's good to hear. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that. And Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation tonight. It was great to hear an update as to what's happening with the project. It's pretty complex, and we've been seeing it move along over this term, and I think it's really helpful to see where things are landing right now. I had a question. Well, first I want to make a general comment about the expansion of the service to the south of our city. I used to live in that area, and I can certainly attest to just what a huge problem the failing septics are, how difficult it is to address from a regulatory point of view, and even to quantify how big the issue is. We don't really have the the jurisdiction to go in and check on how people's septics are functioning. But having lived in an area where we're considering expanding this service to, I could smell in the ditch sometimes when people were doing their laundry. And, you know, it's you know, if you can notice that on a rainy day, you can just imagine what the impact is on our shellfish and our aquaculture in that area. So I'm hugely in support of finding a mechanism to get our sewage treated in a better way to the south. But I do have some questions around just how the cost of conveyancing is going to work in the service, because I mean, looking at the map and, you know, thinking of the development that's going in Union Bay and just how much further we're talking about moving liquid waste versus, you know, residents in Comox, for example. And just wondering if you can provide some information on what the cost is to the service of conveying versus treatment, because obviously if there's more people connecting to the treatment plant, the cost of operating that is spread over more homes, but we're also talking about, you know, bigger resources in moving waste from further areas. So if you could provide some more information on that.
Sure. Yes. So there's been a lot of analysis that's gone into, you know, assessing and confirming the impacts, both negative and positive, from an extension of this type. And so, you know, overall, our assessment is that the existing users of the system will benefit from the increase in the number of connections, modest at first, but with some significant growth potential in the south. So there was a question about capital improvement cost charges earlier. So it's analogous to the development cost charge. So that would be charged and collected from every single additional unit that comes on in the south. So a pretty significant injection of kind of upfront capital to help fund future projects, you know, existing projects, as well as rehabilitation of that new infrastructure. We've also got, you know, there'll be a growing number of connections that will help dilute the operating costs of the existing service. So that's on the positive. On the negative, yes, you know, there is a longer distance to transport some of that wastewater to the Courtenay siphon, but they're not that much farther than what's being considered and planned through delivery of the conveyance project. You know, so just over 10 kilometers of line from the Courtenay siphon to the plant, a little bit more than that coming up from the south. So as we see development occur down there, greater and greater economies of scale, but almost from day one, with the addition of those connections will help to start diluting and offsetting future rate increases for the existing users by just having more dilution of those costs. Yeah.
Great, thanks for those answers.
And I'll just add one, and probably you realize this already, but just to clarify too, that the community will be responsible for its own collection system and the pumping in the collection. It's just the main line and the main pumps that will become the responsibility. I just also want to say too, it's very early stages, but some initial discussions have happened with Courtenay staff. If there is the opportunity for this works to benefit the city of Courtenay and there's a big partnership in those portions of the project, we certainly will seek those opportunities if they're available to us.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks very much for the presentation. Of course, those of us who sit on the Sewage Commission have heard it before, and I also had the pleasure of watching on television as you presented to Comox Council the other day. I have to confess, I didn't watch the entire presentation, but I've lived in the Valley for 43 years, and this issue of failing septic systems and the pollution of Bain Sound has been an issue as long as I can remember. So I think it's historically significant that we're moving in this direction. And at the same time that we're taking care of the environmental risk along the foreshore of the Wilmar Bluffs. I want to just express gratitude and commendation to regional district staff working with the two municipalities to make sure that this problem gets solved and solved in a way that we won't regret in future generations as we do now. That the foreshore conveyance pipe was laid there in the first place. I just wonder though if you want to comment on the economic opportunities that this project will afford, particularly for the Comox First Nation, as well as the potential for grants to support the South Sewer project.
Yeah, there's a couple of benefits to the community in terms of the two projects, both the conveyance and the South Sewer. And first and foremost, it's our contractors and those that will have the opportunities to work with a principal contractor, or primary contractor, or otherwise, and provide their services. We certainly saw that in the water treatment plant, where many of the employees that work there were members of our community. And then on top of that, you mentioned Comox First Nation as part of the community benefit agreement that we struck with them, because this conveyance has to go through their lands, and it is also the existing went through their lands without the level of consultation that should have been done in the first place. So we kind of had to make amends there. So there will be opportunities for them to provide their community and their contractors employment. Chris mentioned the pre-dig, or may have mentioned the pre-dig, or some of the preliminary work that might have to take place. Those are all opportunities where they have the skills and the contractors that work with them to provide those types of services. So we will seek those opportunities as well.
And the South project?
South is the same in terms of the type of construction, and it benefiting from the good quality contractors that we have here to do that type of work. And we're not as far advanced on the planning and design of that to know particularly where those benefits may be, like we are in conveyance. That detailed work will happen in years to come.
Thanks. And as we know, the Comox Nation is looking at potential development in those lands once their treaty settlement process culminates. And this sewer line will not only resolve the environmental problems in Bain Sound, but will open up that potential of development for those lands.
Absolutely, because that is one of their futures in terms of their economic development in their community is they own fee simple lands in the south, and also there will potentially be treaty settlement lands should treaty be realized that they see as the opportunity for development in their future.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Helene. And I think I just have one sort of technical question when it comes to the decommissioning side of things, because obviously there's these pipes in the ground that have been there for a while. Russell stepped aside pretty quickly there. But just wanted to get a sense of, with the decommissioning process, will the pipes be left in the ground, et cetera, depending on location and stuff?
Yes, we have a piece of analysis happening ongoing right now to provide just those answers. There are a number of options that are being considered. Just emptying it, cleaning it out, and filling it with water, cold, fresh water, is one option at the cheapest end of the spectrum. But then there are some obvious kind of future liability issues, that don't know how future, but surely within the coming decades, sections of that pipe become exposed and could become a hazard. So the next option is cleaning it out and filling it with some type of controlled density fill, which is kind of like a really thin, weak concrete that flows well. So they poke a hole every few hundred meters and pump in and fill. But the other upper end of the spectrum is removing it entirely. Most expensive, most environmentally damaging. Those beaches have been impacted, even 40 years on from installation of that pipe. We've heard loud and clear through the consultation that we've done, that people don't want us to tear that pipe out. Just bringing back kind of the trauma of that original installation. So that one doesn't seem very likely. And there are certain specific sections, including along Bayside Road on IR1, where we've committed both within the statutory right-of-way agreement and the CBA with the KFN to remove that section. So that's up in the air, but it'll be coming through the commission at some point in the near future. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Appreciate the presentation. I don't see any further questions or comments. So it sounds like it's easy peasy, nice and easy. Do appreciate the update and best of luck moving forward. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thanks very much. All right, moving right along, we have some staff reports starting with Union of BC Municipality requests. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'll move that based on the June 13th, 2022 staff report, Union of BC Municipalities meeting request, council directs staff to prepare 3 meeting requests with corresponding briefs as follows: supportive housing, emergency shelter, and mental health complex care with Premier Horgan. Also 6th Street active transportation bridge grant application with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, and the 1st Street lift station grant opportunity with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. And Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the council. We started this a little bit last year, just when I had first come on board. So we had some ideas based on council's strategic priorities regarding some potential meetings at UBCM. We would, of course, also, if council had some other thoughts, I would say that we can make these requests up to the 30th. And so if you want to think about this a little bit more through to the meeting on the 27th, you can also do that. I'm available for questions if council has any.
All right, thanks very much. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I think the suggestions made are good ones, but I'm wondering if we want to consider the issue of the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. It seems to me it's been some time since we've sat down with them and talked about the 17th Street Bridge and the bypass and the plans for improvements to both widen the bypass and to improve the intersection, which is a major pinch point in our community. It continues to be a major issue for people, the concern about travel across our bridges and the congestion that takes place at peak times there. So I don't know whether we're in active, staff are in active engagement with Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure at the community level right now, and whether it might not help to once again bring this proposal to ministry officials at the higher level.
All right, Mr. Garbutt.
Through the mayor to Councillor Hillian, we are in discussions at a staff level. Mr. Shaw is in regular correspondence with MOTI, particularly on the bypass issue. If council would like us to request a meeting at UBCM, we can add that to the recommendation. At this point, they have a new island director process underway. Michael Pearson has moved to a different post within the ministry. We have other options. We could request meeting with the minister down in Victoria outside of UBCM. But if you would direct, we would be happy to request such a meeting.
Thanks. And from my perspective, it probably makes more sense to actually do it outside of UBCM, given our proximity and such. But I did get the suggestion before that some of their major projects were significantly delayed by all the work they had to do to in the Fraser Valley related to the flooding and rebuilding the Coquihalla. And, given the recessionary prospects on the horizon and the impact that might have on major projects, I don't think it would hurt for us to make sure that project is front and center for them again, given that we've been looking for this support for quite a few years. So I don't know if a motion is necessary or if there's consensus among council whether staff might want to take that on advisement and pursue the other options for setting something up. Thanks.
Mr. Garbutt.
We can amend, following the questions that you have, we can amend the recommendations and I can draft something as you're speaking.
All right, thanks very much. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I was just wondering about the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and whether we had given any thought to approaching them to find out about upcoming grants and such. We may already know what's going on and we may not need to talk to them, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that. And I'm thinking about cooperative housing, obviously, but also other types of subsidized housing, non-market housing.
Mr. Garvin.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Frisch. Lots of discussion at FCM in this regard. I would say right at this point, we've been advised through BC Housing that future grants are a little limited at this point, and I'm going to be coming back to council with some updates with BC Housing as it relates to kind of the housing continuum itself and discussions we're having. If it was okay with council, if we could proceed on that sort of like outside of the EBCM process, it may be a little bit easier for staff.
Yeah,
but I would obviously take that direction that at a staff level, we need to be making arrangements for discussions in that regard, but I will defer to council.
Yeah, no, I'm fair with that approach, and sometimes it's easier to go at the staff level. So just thanks for the update. Forward to hearing more.
Thanks, Councillor Fritsch and Councillor Healing.
Thanks, Mayor. And I just want to echo Councillor Frisch's suggestion, particularly given the recent meetings we've had with the minister and the suggestions that were made in relation to BC Housing. I think it's important that council gets a really clear picture of what the follow-up possibilities are. We've just recently written to the minister again, acknowledging that we are going to be talking with BC Housing, and I think we need to keep that pressure up. And if a formal meeting at the local level or with BC Housing leadership would help. We haven't really had an accounting from them since we met with the minister about what they're prepared to do in terms of follow-up, other than some informal back and forth. So I think it would be really useful for council to get that type of a meeting set up. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Healing. Appreciate that. I don't see any other comments or suggestions at this point. I know in the past, and I'm not sure if it's worth throwing it out there again. We've done this pretty much every year where we met with the Minister of Finance to talk about tax resource sharing, getting a portion of sales tax, a portion of liquor tax, portion of fuel tax, et cetera, directly to the municipalities. It wouldn't just affect Courtenay, but certainly would help us deal with the sustainability of the services that we're delivering, given the downloading that does happen from the province that often is not accompanied by funds to actually deal with that downloading. So, Councillor Healing.
Well, Mayor, much as I agree with what you're saying, I think that these meetings actually work better if we're talking to them about specific projects and trying to get money or support or engagement on those, as opposed to larger policy matters, which the municipal financing, I think, represents. And at that level, I think going through our partner organizations like UBCM is probably the best way to flog that, hopefully not dead horse.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that, Councillor Healing. Good comments. Based on that, then, do we want to make a motion to amend, or when this motion is passed, to make the change, Mr. Garvey?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, if I could reread the recommendation as I drafted an additional item, if that would be okay, and then
Yeah,
council goes through
absolutely.
that. For council's consideration, that based on the June 13th, 2022 staff report, EBCM meeting requests, council directs staff to prepare 4 meeting requests with corresponding briefs as follows: supportive housing, emergency shelter, mental health, complex care with Premier Horgan, 6th Street active transportation bridge application, grant application with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, 1st Street Puntledge lift station grant opportunity with Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure and Ministry of Municipal Affairs, and traffic congestion, 17th Street Bridge and bypass road improvements, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
It's been moved. Been seconded. Thank you, Councillor Moore. Any conversation? Does that capture what everybody was wanting to have on the motion? Okay. Any questions or comments? Councillor Hillian.
Yeah, I just want to confirm that staff are going to follow up with BC Housing as per CIO's comments.
Mr. Garvin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will follow up with them, but I'm just going to provide a summary briefing note to council at the June 27th meeting. Acknowledge what you're saying. We've had multiple meetings with Minister Eby. We've had some progress, I would say, in terms of discussions with BC Housing, and it's time that I need to provide an update. As of the reason why it's not on today is I didn't have any of the specific details yet from BC Housing, but I hope to in time for that meeting.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for that. All right, we've got a motion on the floor. All those. Well, because there was no motion on the floor, that was the motion. Oh, did you? Okay. So that's okay. So we'll vote on the amendment then. So those in favor of the amendment, any opposed? That passes, and the motion as amended. All those in favor, any opposed? And that's unanimous as well. Perfect. Thanks for keeping me on track, Madam Clerk. All right. Development services. We have development permit variance 2130, and Councillor McCollum.
I can move this one. I'll move that based on the June 13th, 2022 staff report, development permit with variances number 2130-348 14th Street. Council approve option 1 and issue development permit with variance number 2130.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. And Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. I was actually just curious if there's anyone from Development Service to answer questions on this. Yeah, maybe the CAO. The only question I have is if we have any idea of what these units might sell for in today's market, if that's been contemplated.
Mr. Garvin.
Through the mayor to council, the development team is here. They indicated they're here to speak to questions. Mr. Seta is on, I think, to introduce this item. Tats will, can speak to it. We have received some input, and then I'm not entirely sure who would speak for the development group, but I know that Mr. Vincent is here. So if we can start maybe with Mr. Seta.
Yes. Thank you through CEO to Mayor Council. This development application was presented last council meeting. Essentially, this is a micro unit rental apartment as a part of phase 2 of the development. So one of the variants is to relaxation of the parking requirement, which we receive comment back from the community. So the comment was attached to the report, as you can see. So the general concern about the parking flow and the parking overflow on the community, we anticipated, but this is the some quite compromise approach. While we were try to increase density close to the downtown core. So our directors are here too. Director Chris Marshall may want to add some comment on this application.
Yeah,
thanks, Chris.
Yeah, if you don't mind, through you to the mayor. There's a couple issues that have been raised from the surrounding neighbors. One of which is parking, which Mr. Seta just described. The other is the fact that the developer who developed these neighboring townhouses, there was the letters from the neighbors saying that this area that's going to be proposed for the micro units was described as a as a high-end condo development. And so there is some feeling from the surrounding neighbors who recently bought townhouses that they were misled by what was being proposed, but that's not something staff can speak to. But that was the other main issue that seemed to surface. There doesn't seem to be any concern with the setbacks and the height variances that were proposed for this particular development. And also just to note that there's a large number of, I think there's 45 bike parking spaces provided with this development. So that was seen as a sort of trade-off for the lack of car parking that is being provided by the developer. And certainly this is a form of housing which we as staff are aware is much in need in the community. It is close to the services, sort of shopping mall, so people can walk to Thrifties and regular services. This is within an area that's got public transportation. So there are a lot of other alternatives to owning and using a car. So staff are recommending the proposed variances and to adopt the development permit.
All right, thanks very much for that. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I have a question. We have a fairly lengthy submission from an individual who obviously took a fair amount of time and care to prepare it. So I do want to acknowledge that. And this individual, along with several others, raises the concerns that staff have noted related to both parking and what they thought was going to be developed there. The one particular submission has 16 addresses at the 356 14th Street building, or complex rather, noted, but they're blank. Are we to assume that there were 16 signatures on the original document, or I'm just a little bit confused about that, if staff could clarify?
Mayor, can I address the council? I actually wrote that letter, so I'm actually here to represent the residents on this case.
That's an excellent question. Look to our Madam Clerk. Mr. Garber.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, we have the developer here. They have an opportunity to speak. We have one of the respondents to the variance. They will have an opportunity should they wish to address council. These are just general matters as we unfold this. So if you have any specific questions, I think the developer's representative is here to answer them. You can invite the person who is provided that correspondence, and then the developer can close up your deliberation.
If it's helpful, Mayor, I'll move that both the developer and the individual who indicated they'd like to speak be permitted by council to address us.
All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. And I think we may have an item on the table already, but we'll just kind of, it's all good. We'll make it work. I did want to just confirm that Councillor Frisch's question got answered, because you had a question and I'm just wondering if that got answered.
Yeah, it's not answered yet, but I'll be sure to specify the question. And just to clarify, I hope this doesn't turn into a lengthy debate, but a quick question and answer period by these individuals.
Awesome. Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to finish off, I wanted to clarify the issue that was raised about the intent of the development, and so I appreciate that the developer is likely able to speak to that. I also want to revisit the comments that were made by our CAO when this was dealt with at the previous meeting. Around development of this nature without car parking for all of the units, because that's the main objection that we're hearing from people in the community. And our CAO made some comments at the last meeting, which I think are worth repeating, which relate both to the need for this type of development and also how it might fit in with our official community plan, and the idea that communities such as Courtenay are becoming hopefully less car dependent and encouraging more accommodation that enables people to get around by foot and other means. But we have a huge cultural gap to overcome there, because the expectation that we have in our community among most people, I would say, is that everybody will have a car, and therefore there needs to be a place for every one of those cars to park. So I think it'd be helpful if staff commented on the direction we're going in that regard, along with whatever we hear from the individuals involved. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, for that. And so at this point, if staff are good, we'll maybe have the person who wrote the letter, sorry, and I'll let you introduce yourself. But if you want to come up to the podium, and just to the right of the podium, so not the microphone that's on the podium, but next to the podium. And if you just push that, I'll get that mic fired up for you. And if you could just introduce yourself, just so we know who we're hearing from, and we'll go from there. And your mic is on.
All right, so my name is Joseph Barkley. I'm one of the residents at 356 14th Street. The letter that I had sent in to you, because when I was speaking with some staff at the city, they requested that they had a copy in electronic form for the council to review by Monday. So I had that in. I actually had the signatures done by other residents of the complex over last weekend and into this week. So I've been authorized to come and represent 7 of those 9 townhouses. To my knowledge, there are currently still 6 of those that are still vacant, leaving 10 that are occupied, one of which is responded under their own letter in addition to our own as a group. So the issues that were raised, first of all, I'd like to actually commend some investments. First of all, on the quality of work that they've done in the townhouses, the responsiveness that I've had with any concerns that I've had with their contracting staff, and in being able to address any concerns that I've had as a purchaser there. It's actually been quite a good relationship so far. So I appreciate that, and I thank you for that. The concerns that were brought forth, the first one being about the nature of the complexes coming in. I included that in the letter as it was something that some residents had vocalized a concern over. And it comes down to whether or not that's going to have an impact on us, on our values, on the properties. We're unsure of what will happen with that, because we don't know what the actual intended use of that complex is going to be. In writing this response, I got to do a fair amount of research, and I've done more actually since I've done the submission. So I would actually ask council to have a look at some more of the products that are out there, discussing the challenges of having micro suites in cities and how to mitigate those. Going into the use of them, as we've said in our submission, we fully recognize the struggles that we have as a community with accommodations in the city of Courtenay. And we don't want to be people that are turning a blind eye to that at all. It's an important issue, and it's one that does need to be addressed. But those things do need to be taken into account in balance with how that's going to impact the people that are in close proximity, especially in a case like this where some of the values and some of the decisions as to whether or not we were purchasing those townhouses were based on what we were told that development was going to be. As an example for myself, if I don't have access to the parking that I have access to now, including the street parking and what's with my unit, I would not have purchased that property. That was one of the things that was a deciding factor for whether or not I was going to purchase that property. And so what the proposed development for that property was at the time suited my needs for what I would require as a resident in the community. Getting to the parking side of things, there's a little more clarity in some studies about exactly what could arguably be a sustainable amount of parking for a development like this and what wouldn't be. There's guidance and documents from studies done through Sustainable Technologies for the City of Toronto, which was published in May of 2020. That's very, very in-depth about how to go forward with a micro suite development. One of the big things that it talks about is doing a pilot project and starting off with that and seeing how it goes. Just so you're aware, a 45-unit micro suite complex is one of the largest micro suite complexes that has ever been proposed to be done. The City of Vancouver has a single micro suite complex that's been authorized. It has a 60-40 split. 60% of that complex is non-market community housing. The other 40% is secured market community housing. It has the only property that I could find in the City of Vancouver. It's located in East Hastings, and it has a per unit ratio for parking of 0.34, so 34% of the units. So to go to what we found being more comparable for where we're living and what we were expecting that property to become, the best comparable units or complex that we could find was actually located in Victoria at 21 Gorge Street East, and that has a one parking place per unit parking allocation for that development. The issue that we have is as residents with not having sufficient amounts of parking, again, recognizing that we want to move away from, a lot of us want to move away from being reliant on cars. Again, going to my own purchase choice to buy there, I am completely reliant on a car. Public service or public transportation does not in any way, shape, or form meet my transportation needs. When my phone rings at 2 o'clock in the morning and I have to be at work within the next hour, there's no bus. There's no public transportation that's available for me to do that. And I'm not the only person there that has that issue. To build a 45-unit complex and not have a viable option for someone to have a car and to have parking and only have 24 parking spaces available for them is forcing 21 residents to find a different place to park, being outside of my house, outside of the local businesses that have responded to talking about the overflow, parking in the Thrifty parking lot, which that's private property and that's not allowed because they're not a client for the businesses in that parking lot. It's just not really viable for that. There's enough street frontage on 14th Street in England for approximately 16 cars, which the current residents of the townhouses quite often are using on England Street. So the big concern that we have with that is that because there is a lack of parking available for the proposed complex, that's all going to push out onto 14th Street, on England Street, and onto like the rest of the streets of the residents surrounding that proposed complex. Assuming that we are looking at a demographic that will be like more likely to have those cars in place. So.
We're at about 5 minutes, and we do have the submission as well. So, and I think you've covered most of the topics. Is there anything else that you think is critical?
That covers the gist of what we wanted to talk about. So thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor, Council.
All right, thanks, Joseph. And we'll let the proponent speak now, I think, if you want to respond.
Yeah, we actually, when we got the letters from some of the residents and the doctor's office across the street, we kind of delved into where we started with the property. The townhouses were always on the table, and there was a proposed 6-story, I think it was a 30 or 32 unit condo, like a fairly high-end condo building planned at one point. I checked the dates, you guys. We'd actually shelved that project about 8 months before the first sale made in there. I do appreciate, like I don't get to talk to all the customers. We have a realtor who's my wife. Customers have other realtors, so we don't always know the questions they ask. But I can say that at the time that we pulled the condo building, we specifically made a business decision based on the market and the fact, to answer David's question, that we actually are going to keep the building and have it as a purpose-built rental. They're not going to be for sale. So, when we hire consultants, we don't necessarily ask them for guidance. We design a building based on the space we have, the style of building we want, and then we put it out to, civil consultants, architects, envelope consultants, and in this case, traffic consultants. So they come back with a report based on the examples that they give us. And there's really not a lot of engagement with us. They send us the report and we review it. If we have any questions, we call them. And in this case, we just, there seems to be enough evidence for them to support what we were trying to do. I do have a business acquaintance that has a 16-unit micro building right downtown Courtenay with 0 parking. And what I'm told from him is he's had 0 issues. I don't know the city's experience, but the feedback we're getting from other developers in Nanaimo, where there's quite a significant micro project, is that the people are generally working in the day if they have a vehicle, but 80% of the people that are living in some of these buildings that in our research don't have cars. And just a side point, I have these young people coming in to apply for jobs for our company, labor jobs, and we've got it pegged at like 65 to 70% of them don't have licenses. It astounds me that more young people don't have cars, but it seems to be going in that direction because of cost. Like, just the cost for lessons, cost for fuel, cost for insurance. And so, yeah, I apologize, to one of our good customers here if there was any gaps in communication, but it did not come from us. We've been upfront with anybody that's asked in the complex, and we've talked to the doctors across the street, and I don't know the parking count on the street. All I know is that if you drive by there at this time of the day, the street is empty on 14th for sure. There is some cars that are generally parked on England. Some of the residents park there because of the style of units where you can actually walk into the middle level. But we chose this development to try to be a part of the solution in Courtenay. We've got another project on Cumberland Road that has 15 micros in it that's been approved, and we've got a building permit with the city of Courtenay, and we're actually just dealing with BC Housing and CMHC to try to generate some more housing in downtown Courtenay with that's supportive. So,
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Hillian.
I just want to clarify for the record, Mr. Mayor, that we're hearing from Mr. Vincent from Sema Development. I don't think he was asked to state his name.
Right. My apologies. Yeah.
No
Thanks for clarifying that, Councillor Hillian. And Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks so much for answering some questions. And forgive me if it's in the documentation. We've had quite a few pages of agendas in the last while, and I don't always catch all the details, but I'm happy to hear that these will be rentals. And I'm assuming these will be all be market. And do you have any prices for what the rents will be, or will they all be at market, I'm assuming?
Yeah, they're all at market. Based on the example of the gentleman that's renting units on 5th Street, which he's around $1,000, we expect that ours will be in the $1,000 to $1,200 a month range, which sounds like a lot of money for a micro unit to me. But when the banks are the ones that tell us if we can do a project or not. And so there's a balance there. I have talked to the managers at the Thrifties, Brown Social House, and Starbucks, and they're basically just told me to come and let them know when the building's being built so that they can get us a list of people that work for them, but take buses and bikes to work, but would prefer to live closer to work. So again, the other thing I'll say that in our research as experienced developers, that a mix of product in developments in neighborhoods actually are the ones that seem to have the most success in the long haul. I know that in the near term, it can be a little bit scary when people are hearing about a new type of product that is going to be right on their doorstep. But the feedback we're getting from other communities, and again, Nanaimo, Duncan, and Victoria, is that these seem to work quite well together. It's new for here. And, you know, we do a lot of research before we commit to spending all this money on plans and development. And we don't do anything that we don't think is going to work and be a good fit, you know, for the long haul.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I thought I saw another light. Oh, Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, just your final comment. Queued a question for me. Will your development company intend to retain ownership of the building or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And is that a new business model for you, or have you done a purpose-built rental developments in the past?
No, we have been involved with small ones. There's one we were involved helping another group get together down on 20th Street. We've got a purpose-built rental going in on 13th Street, 12 units with 4 micros. Again, we had a little bit of a parking reduction there for the micros. And then the building on Cumberland Road, right by the fire hall, it's going to have 33 units total, 15 micros, 9 1-bedroom, 9 2-bedroom. That's going to be held, and it's going to be a purpose-built rental.
Great, thanks for the clarification.
All right. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. This isn't for Mr. Vincent, but I did have the earlier request if staff could speak to how this proposal fits with where we're heading as a community in general and how it relates to our revised official community plan.
Mr. Corbett.
Thank you. Through Mayor to Council, and in the introduction to this application, thanks for Councillor Hillian, I can be famous. I pointed to the fact that through the deliberations related to the drafting of our official community plan, Council sat down with developers. They heard the issues, the innovation, and I think our development community, this is an example, they're responding to what they're hearing from Council. They developed a project that had over and above protected bike parking. They've clearly been listening to the issues that have been raised through the official community plan. That was the context of my original comments, but I would defer Mr. Marshall, Mr. Seta. They provided the staff report. Your professional planners supported the recommendations, I think based largely on that innovation and the direction in the upcoming OCP. So whether Chris or Tats are going to speak to this, I'll defer to them.
Yeah, Your Worship, through you to Council, the this particular application is certainly fits within what we're trying to achieve in the new official community plan. We're trying to create higher densities around existing commercial areas, existing nodes of development, where there's public transportation, where people can walk and ride their bikes to places that are within close proximity. This is not only within steps of a shopping mall, but it's within blocks of our downtown. Certainly, any community that has a developer who's willing to build purpose-built rental, it's a fairly rare thing. In fact, when I was working back in Ontario, there wasn't a single development that was approved that was purpose-built rental. So I'm pleasantly surprised to see that that is actually something that is warranted and got a market for here, because certainly, as the developer pointed out, there are lots of young people who can't afford a 1-bedroom or bachelor apartment, and this provides an alternative to them. We are looking in the official community plan at reducing parking where there's additional bike parking, so they're meeting that demand both in our zoning and the official community plan. Yeah, this is a need that has been recognized in the community, and which fits within what we've discussed with as a plan for the going forward. I'm not espousing that every development from here on in should be a micro unit development. But certainly we've got a big gap to fill before, you know, the need out there is been provided for.
Excellent. Thanks very much. I think that's probably exhausted most of our conversation here. Did you have another comment at all? You sure?
Thanks for your time.
No, you're good. So I just want to appreciate and acknowledge the proponent and one of the folks that were living and gave a submission there earlier for speaking tonight. What's that?
Can I get a short response to that?
It would have to be like very quick, like 1 minute kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. And you'll have to push the button again.
Yes. Perfect. So just to talk to where we're going for the community planning and whatnot. I recognize the need for more rental units in Courtenay, and it's absolutely is a need that does need to be fulfilled. I urge you as council to have a look at the materials that are out there looking at microsuites specifically. Generally speaking, people that are residents of microsuites, a lot of feedback is that they accept the requirement to use the small space. Was not their ideal. It's not where they want to live, but they accept it. There's also a development cost charge going to the developers of approximately $3,000 per suite in a micro unit complex. So that's $135,000 in this case. The other examples that Mr. Vincent gave, we have mixed units, which is the preferred method for micros. They have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and the micros. So just to reiterate, it's a very, very large proposal that he's giving in an area, and it is very unique, and it's pretty groundbreaking. Just want to highlight that.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks for that clarification. Okay, Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I think it's incumbent for us to say whether we support this or not, and if so, why. You know, I take seriously the comments that have been made today and in the written materials that have come to us. I know that when people invest in a place to live with certain ideas about what it's going to look like, it's very difficult to find out a year or so later that something different is happening from what you had envisioned. I also know, as I said earlier, that we live in a car-oriented culture, and we don't necessarily all know people who are willing to live in our community with vehicles. My son is returning from working abroad in a short while, and he will initially live with me, but very quickly we'll be looking for a place. And I'm assuming, at least for the first while, that he will ride the mountain bike that he's purchased with his earnings when he's been away. And he won't have a vehicle. I know there are more people around who are like that. And the reality is that if we continue to build our communities so that you have to have a vehicle to live in them, we will continue to have that culture dependence. Until we start doing things differently, we can't expect to get a different result from what we get now. But again, I understand that it's a difficult situation, and it may prove to have some inconvenience for people involved. I tend not to be as concerned about property values. I don't know of too many instances that we can demonstrate where property values are going down, even though the market seems to have stalled at the moment. But on balance, I believe that our need for accommodation for people, particularly people who will work at places like the grocery store and the various service industries that are in that neighborhood, creates a market for this type of accommodation, and it is innovative. And on balance, because of that, I'm inclined to vote in favor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. Councillor McCollum. Oh, sorry. Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm also supportive of the variance. I do certainly understand some of the concerns that have been raised, and I do sympathize with having to adjust to a change in expectations, although I know from information that has come into the city that this has been in the works for a while. I think even before the the townhouses were developed, we deliberated on the development on phase 1, and the phase 2 piece wasn't clear what path it was going on back then, and I think that was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. But I mean, to summarize where I'm coming from, I think the biggest concern that we heard about was parking, and I don't share the belief that this is going to pose a problem in the area. I cannot envision a location within our downtown area that would be more suitable for a limited parking availability in small apartments. It's central, it's close to parks, it's close to biking, it's close to bus services. There's a grocery store within steps. It would probably be more of an effort to get in a car and drive to the grocery store than it would be to just walk there from where this building is going to be located. So, and I just want to make the point that as the earlier speaker mentioned, parking is a factor when people decide where they want to reside. And if you are choosing to locate yourself somewhere where parking is constrained, you are probably not a 2-vehicle household deciding to locate to somewhere with no parking access. So part of this is that it will most likely be more attractive for those people who do not feel that they need a vehicle in order to function day to day. So I think the assumptions in the parking study were fairly reasonable, and I'm supportive of what's before us. So just want to make those comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I don't want to go on too long in this debate. I'm definitely in favor of the variances, and I just want to outline that in order to get bus service that's more frequent and adequate to be relied on, you actually need higher density to do that. And so it's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation, but we do have to take some steps forward, as mentioned earlier, to get more density in our downtown core and near those services in order for us to create the demand for those different bus services. We already have the sidewalks, and the bike lanes are coming along. And so I think this will be a good addition type of development for that area. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I think most folks have covered most of the area. I did want to emphasize the staffing issues that businesses are having, primarily because they don't have their employees or potential employees don't have anywhere to live. And these do tend to be younger folks who would probably, and I'm talking about grocery stores downtown and all kinds of other businesses. So I think there is definitely a need. I do appreciate hearing the feedback from other folks in the area. I think there's some other issues going, some concerns there that are really not part of this planning process that we don't really have much control over. But in terms of the parking piece, I don't see it as an issue. I know people often rely on street parking. They think if there's street parking nearby that's theirs, but unfortunately that's not the case. We don't own the street parking. It is for anyone. So I guess, I mean, that's something to consider when you move somewhere that don't allow for street parking to be, to have 2 or 3 cars because there happens to be an empty spot there, because that might not be the case going forward. We also have the seniors home opening up as well, which is going to have a ton of employees there. So I think that there are there is some good support for this. And I guess in terms of the micro unit piece, many people are pushing us for tiny homes, and many people, and I would say that the generation of my kids and even my older grandkids is very minimalist, and they certainly don't want our old china and everything else. And I think many people are actually wanting a smaller unit where they don't have a lot of upkeep and they don't have a lot of stuff. So I think times are changing, and as was mentioned, we won't. We'll continue to have car and traffic problems if we always plan for that. And I think that we have enough people changing their patterns that this is a good idea. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Morin. Councillor Theos. Okay, so you're not going to comment? Okay. All right, bucking the trend. That ship has sailed, unfortunately, but I'll maybe make a couple of comments, having just returned from the FCM conference where this was a topic right across the nation, and in particular the city of Edmonton, which has actually removed minimum parking. So the minimum parking in the city of Edmonton is actually no parking. And how they leave it up to the developers themselves to decide what kind of parking is going to be required for the clientele. And looking at the strategic priorities of this council, and I think to a large degree our previous councils, is a housing first one. There is a critical need for housing in our community, and that's sort of the number one thing to kind of be thinking about, I think, and that really leads where I think about this. But not just that, but when we talk about the innovations, when we talk about trying to create that demand for more transit, and transit is one option, but there's other options out there, and looking to see how things like car shares, which are actually part of developments, are a possibility. And again, it's not one size fits all, but I think at the end of the day, it really does come down to the market. Knowing that we need places for people to stay and to live. And the people who are going to be choosing to live here will know what those limitations are. And so they will be making an educated decision that they are in a micro unit and what those limitations on parking are. So for that reason, I will be in support of this as well. Based on that, somehow that we're trying to keep this tight, Councillor Theos.
I'll be really quick if you were hoping everyone's going to make a comment. I myself personally, I do think the presentation that Joe made was very well brought forward, and I do appreciate the public coming forward and speaking their minds, and had some very excellent points. But from my perspective, I have a daughter that lives in a type of a micro unit, and for her needs in downtown Courtenay, they are being met, and she is one of the people that does not have a vehicle and does not have a license, and she is able to walk and access all the amenities she needs. And I've been to visit her a number of times, and it's a very quiet building. Very low amount of infrastructure is appearing to be used. So again, it kind of meets the density goal. And I think that as in terms of values, as Councillor Hillian said, I see where she's living as a bit of an asset to that area, and possibly would increase the values more than decrease. So, but again, to both parties, that was an excellent way of communicating to us between both groups, and I appreciated it. So thank you for both of you.
Thanks, Councillor Theos. And I think that actually illustrates a good thing. I do want to really commend the folks that spoke today on their professionalism and respect. Do appreciate that. That being said, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thanks very much. And moving on to financial services, Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that based on the June 13th, 2022 staff report, Financial Information Act 2021 Statement of Financial Information, Council approve option 1 and approve the City of Courtenay Statement of Financial Information for the year ended December 31st, 2021.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Garber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through our new Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Langemeyer, is going to do a short introduction of this report.
Mayor and Council, nice to be here. Coming from TV land, of course. So the reason why I'm here today is to seek council approval for the annual statement of financial information, also called the SOFI. So the Financial Information Act and the Financial Information Act regulation requires local governments to prepare an annual statement of information. In addition, Section 168 of the Community Charter requires the city to prepare an annual report of council's remuneration, expense, and contracts. I would request that Mayor and Council consider approving the SOFI report, as the deadline for submission to the province is June 30th. You'll notice, as in prior years, expenses for Mayor and Council are lower than Mayor and Council and staff are lower due to less travel, going to conferences, and professional development. Other than that, it is fairly consistent with the prior years. And with that, I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, Adam. And your sound quality is stupendous, I got to say, although it's a bit distracting the way the wires have a little Mickey Mouse kind of effect happening. But I appreciate the introduction to this. This is really a housekeeping item, and but I'll look to my council and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Adam, for the report. I don't have any issues with it or any serious questions, but it provides for some interesting reading as we get to see how much money everyone made last year. And I was surprised at how low mine was, but I guess that'll change in future years if I ever get reelected. So thanks for that. I'm happy to adopt this.
And Councillor Theos.
Oh, thank you very much, Mayor. Yeah, thanks, Adam. Appreciate the report. Just wanted to ask a question that one of the questions that I have, a couple questions actually, is on Schedule 5, but just the identifying the cash on hand, jumping up from 27 million to just under 38 million, and wouldn't mind hearing, because again, that's one of the numbers here that really was different from the year previous, just how that unfolds, if you wouldn't mind answering that, please, Adam. Thanks.
Yeah, I can answer that. So I'm going to go off what the auditor's presentation was. And if you notice, our accounts payable increased in that period also, along with our deferred revenue. So keeping our balance sheet balanced, we have to have a higher cash balance if our payables are up and our deferred revenue is up. Beyond that, if we look at the year to year on the income statement, or what we call it in PSAB is the statement of operations, is we're pretty consistent. And so where I want to leave that change in cash is really in that payables and deferred revenue area.
Great. Thank you very much, Adam. And secondly, if I may ask, with the tangible assets, the capital assets, excuse me, we've been going through a period of significant growth and value of the assets that we have. If that was to change directions, and it happens to be where there's a decrease in assessed values for capital assets, is that particular number, is that particular number under the tangible capital assets, is that vulnerable to interest rates, or is it vulnerable to assessments? Just a bit of a clarity on that, how that works a little bit better. Thank you.
So the tangible capital asset line found on the statement of financial position, those are not impacted by interest rate change, assessment change. Those are the assets that the city owns, like the pipes in the ground, the roads, streetlights, and they are represented at historic cost. So what they cost to build is what is the summation of that number, that $174 million.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Adam.
All right, thanks, Adam. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to make one comment and then ask one question. The comment relates to councillor expenses, which there's a difference between some and others, and I expect that that relates to attendance at conferences, all of which would have been virtual in 2021. But nonetheless did include registration fees. Otherwise, we did virtually no travel that year, and the expenses are significantly lower than they might normally be. My question relates to the Schedule 4 and the consolidated schedule of debentures and other long-term debt. And do we still owe over $2 million on the expansion of the Lewis Center that took place a number of years ago?
That I cannot confirm right now because I'm not overly familiar with this year's set of financial statements. If that is what is represented on the statements, that is true.
Well, it's just interesting looking at it because, of course, the common knock on this council is that we spend too much money on bike lanes, and why don't we do other things? And, you look at this and you see road repaving and you see public works maintenance and Lerwick Road construction and, things like that. And they're all, fairly high cost items, representing a significant amount of infrastructure, including 800,000 for road paving. But that did stand out to me. I wasn't aware that we were still paying off the Lewis Center renovations, which I can't remember how long that goes back, but they've got to be 10 years old or so. Yeah. Anyway, presumably we can find that out and reference it at a later point. Thanks.
Get an idea when it's going to be paid off. Mr. Garbutt had a comment as well.
Thanks. We'll follow up. As you know, Mr. Langmar is still fairly new with us, and I'm sure his staff have a crackerjack answer for that right away. But we'll reach out to council with information. Thanks.
Excellent. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Next, we have external correspondence from the Comox Valley Sewage Service Established by Law 2541. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that the City of Courtenay consent to the adoption of the Comox Valley Regional District Bylaw number 716, being Comox Valley Sewage Service Establishment Bylaw number 2541, 2003 Amendment number 2 under Section 346 of the Local Government Act.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council. You have in front of you some correspondence from the CVRD and the accompanying staff report that a few of our directors, as they sit at the CVRD table, are aware of. We will be continuing to discuss the issue of the implications of the sewer extension. As you heard both in our during our public briefing related to future treaty issues, there's significant development that's planned in that node. We do have some very significant other costs that we share as a community. When the RGS was drafted, those public costs of development was an underlying issue. So there may be costs related to future operation of the sewer service itself, but there is the balance of services that are operated within the region. And so we'll continue to have discussions at a staff level, and at some point there'll be some discussion at a political level. Obviously, from a sanitary sewer perspective, this is essential to address issues related to environmental management. And we support sewer servicing in accordance with the regional growth strategy.
All right, thanks very much for that. All right, I don't see any further questions or comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. We're getting into our management reports. We've probably got about 30 to 60 minutes left, wondering if council wants to push through or take a break. Comfort break for 5? We have food. So. Yeah, absolutely. I would say, yeah, let's take a 25-minute break. All right, and we'll reconvene, I guess, 10 to 7-ish. That sound right? 6:45? Okay, 6:45 we'll return. All right. thanks everybody for the quick little recess that we had for dinner. And we're moving into item number 7, internal reports and correspondence. Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council receive the Development Services Management Report.
Excellent. And are there any questions or comments regarding this report? Seeing none, all those in favor of receipt, any opposed, and that passes. And the next report, Councillor Frisch, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. I'll move that we receive the Recreation, Culture, and Community Services Management Report.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the report to staff. I'm just wondering if we have any details on when precisely the open houses and community engagement related to McPhee Meadows will occur. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hillian. Mr. Garbett.
Thanks. Mr. Rushton is there. Craig, if you can speak to the question, please.
You bet. Thanks for the CEO, to Mayor and Council. Thanks for the question. Councillor Hillian, we are very close. Unfortunately, I don't have dates in front of me, but we're just working right now with consultants. So I would, I'd suspect that, you know, we've got a next step of meeting with the Nature Trust and check in with some of the immediate neighbors. We'll be moving to the open house and engaging the community in the concept design very shortly, I would suspect within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Thanks for that. And Mr. Rushton, I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to highly commend you and your staff, Scott Mossing and all of the others at the city who worked so hard to make the Randy Witchart Plaza dedication such an incredible event on Saturday. Very well received by all those attending, particularly the family. Just an excellent job all around by staff to make that event happening. Thanks so very much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your comments, and I wholeheartedly agree. It was a great collaborative collaboration with the Sid Williams and the city staff, and enjoyed to participate. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no, it was great, and I think those dilly bars went a long way as well. So thanks so much for that. Any further questions or comments? See none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And then the engineering report. Moved and seconded first by Councillor Hillian and Councillor Frisch. Thanks for that. And any questions or comments regarding the engineering management report? Councillor Hillian.
You know, Mr. Mayor, I'm honestly not sure whether I have a question or not, because as Councillor Morin alluded to earlier, we went through a lot of material in preparation for this meeting, and so you don't always retain. I guess one of the questions I did have in relation to this one, though, was to do with the east-west multi-use path connector, where it says it's totally deferred to 2023. It was my understanding that there were some discussions going on in relation to the, at least the project with the new hotel there, or sorry, the new apartment block and some of the other possibilities. So I'm just wondering if there might be any update related to that.
All right, Mr. Garbett.
Thank you. I'll through the mayor to Councillor Hillian, and I'll start, and then Mr. Davidson is here, as well as Mr. Marshall. So with respect to the totality of the east-west connector, that's being impacted a little bit by MOTI and the the bypass project. Staff are actively working with the issue of connectivity from Back Road through to the 801 Ryan Road project currently right now. Mr. Shaw, who's not on the line today, but is also working on pedestrian controlled intersection on Back and Tunner. So we have quite a few moving parts there. So with respect to a portion of the east-west is being worked on right now. That will be up to 801, the 801 Ryan Road rezoning project. We anticipate that into building permitting later this year.
That's great, and thanks for letting slip that Mr. Shaw is working on the Tunner Crosswalk. That's excellent news, and I've now remembered my original question, which relates to the air quality initiative, where it indicates a staff report is being developed to address outstanding council resolutions, and those would be the resolutions related to no burn days and potential bylaw enforcement of problematic burning. I'm just wondering if we know at what point we might see that staff report, if it's likely to come to us before the fall.
Through the Mayor to Councillor Healy, Mr. Davidson can speak to that.
Yes, thank you for the question. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council. Yes, we're targeting the July 25th council meeting to bring a report back to council on the topic of airshed. Thank you very much.
Well, that's good to know. And then do you happen to know when the regional district will again be dealing with the airshed roundtable report? As you know, that was deferred, and I believe medical health officer Anns will be speaking to it that's what the hope for, one of the hope for outcomes at the next session.
Another excellent question. Thank you. Not sure exactly when they'll be coming back, but we are liaising with them closely. We do understand there was some concerns raised, so we want to make sure we have that perspective when we bring our staff report forward as well.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, Mr. Garvin.
Thank you. Also, just for council's reference, we haven't yet had any response to our council's direction back regarding burning controls in the electoral areas either. So I've asked staff to remain on top of that, just for council's reference.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. And I want to thank Councillor Hilling for asking the question and for those answers as well. I did talk to staff just about the urgency around that Tunner crossing, as well as looking into Cumberland Road up by Arden, which is also another pinch point, I think, for safety. So I really appreciate staff looking into those things. And again, that's why we have the management report, so that we can have these discussions. So see no further questions or comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And then that gets us to the CAO management report. All right, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the CAO's report? Councillor Hillian.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. There is a reference to 2700 Mission Road and BC Housing, and I know that goes back a year when, or a significant amount of time for when we met with the minister and received, I believe, assurance that that project was following through. I'm just not sure what the 25% of the particular task relates to regarding 2700 Mission Road, or if it's meant to apply to other projects along the lines of our earlier discussion tonight.
Thanks for that, Mr. Garvin.
Thank you for catching a typo. That was the original iteration of that discussion with respect to BC Housing. Subsequent with our discussions through the strategic plan review, the item for me as a CAO was a bigger picture work with BC Housing. So I'll reflect that in the management report on a go-forward basis. 2700 is progressing very nicely. Lots of work happening on site if you go by. And really happy with that project. And I think the proponent as well as CBTS are quite happy. One takeaway from BC Housing on that is that when they're involved in projects, they're going to be actively at the table with staff. That's another development in that regard. Council, I was advised, this was before my time, that the city wasn't totally aware of the ongoing arrangements with BC Housing as that file was progressing up to, I think, the public hearing is when that was there. Mr. Vincent through Simba was reflecting some discussions he's having with BC Housing and CMHC right now. And as I said earlier, I'll be updating council on just some status, because there is a lot of moving parts as it relates. We have ongoing issues and discussions with Habitat for Humanity, we have BC Housing, Golden Valley Transition Society, and then we have ongoing discussions related to the OCP implementation as well. So thanks.
Thank you. And I do have to say thank you for your engagement with BC Housing. I know that you've been a frequent caller and corresponder with them. And we do eagerly anticipate the report you'll be bringing forward.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hillian. And when I spoke to both the proponent and Transition Society on Friday, everybody seemed very happy and like things are going as good as possible. And again, a huge thank you to our staff, obviously, but I think even to our council, who was very adamant when we met with BC Housing that this project was absolutely critical. And at that point, looked like it wasn't going to happen, and we got it back on track. So just big kudos for everybody. I don't see any further questions or comments. So all those in favor, any opposed, that passes unanimously. And that gets us into an anti-harassment of sports officials signage requirements. All right, it's been moved and seconded. And there's a briefing note. Mr. Garbutt.
I think Mr. Rushton's just going to give a real short overview.
Yes, thank you through the CEO to Mayor and Council. So as you'll remember, Eric Erickson, on behalf of the BC umpires, brought a delegation forward in January. We took Council's resolution to move that forward and met with the other municipalities and with the CVRD to talk about this issue. They all agreed that it is an issue that's facing, but that there was signage up for some of the other sports, and that it was specifically it was addressed to the specific sport was a good way to go about doing it. So I looped back in with Eric, as a representative for the BC Umpires Association, and we talked about the signage. We also talked about the best way to enforce this, and so we decided actually using the fees, using the user groups themselves for the enforcement, and tying that in with the annual process whereby they come and request the fields, and we would tie it in with them, and we'll monitor the effectiveness of the signage and the facility user agreements as we go. But we felt like that was probably the best way to move that forward. I've since touched base with Eric Erickson and the BC umpires, and they're very, very happy with this outcome and fully endorse it. So I'll take any questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Craig. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. This is an issue that was brought forward by a community resident approximately 5 months ago. And I just want to commend staff for what I think is a very positive process and a very positive result that hopefully helps to get that message out to the community about the fair play and respect that we want to see on our community playing fields and facilities. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Council reports. Councillor Cole Hamilton will be very brief tonight. He's off, but does send his regrets. He's still recovering from his trip to the Regina FCM. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I don't have too much to report, but I will share that I was at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference last weekend, and ran into lots of people from around Canada with interesting conversations about how they're dealing with issues in their communities. And it was well worth the trip. And Regina is definitely an interesting city, worth a look if you're passing across the prairies. And that's about it. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Barry. Most noteworthy was my participation in the event on Saturday for the plaza dedication, which has already been spoken about. I did attend FCM virtually, and unfortunately found that most of the workshop sessions were not available to online participants. They eventually will be, but we all know how that works. I think that while for me it didn't work to attend in person, there were certainly some limitations with the online engagement this time around that I would probably not advise on another occasion. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Hillian. Appreciate that. And the plaza dedication for Randy Witcher. Just again, kudos to you as well for your making sure you're keeping everybody at task on that. And that was recognized at the actual plaza dedication as well. Councillor McCollum and Councillor Moore.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring up one thing, which was Councillor Hillian and I attended the Go by Bike Week celebration station. And it was down behind trail bikes on the Riverway Trail, or I guess we call that section the Riverway as well. And yeah, it was quite fun actually. And it wasn't the best day. It didn't pour on us until the end. But I just was so impressed with the variety of people using the trail. And we had, people biking to work. We had people who did more than one pass by, I don't know if they were coming back for some more swag, but because we did have some swag to give out. This was with Regional District kind of took the helm on this and we helped out. But yeah, it was just great chatting with people and folks from out of town who really appreciated the bike lanes that we do have and commented about cycling infrastructure in other communities. And people do plan around that kind of thing. So, and then of course there were people walking with strollers. It was, I don't know if Councillor Hillian would add anything, but I found it interesting to hear where people were from and excuse me, whether they were being active for pleasure or just to get to work or whatever. So thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. I appreciate that. And Councillor Theos.
Yes, thank you very much.
Oh, there we go.
Appreciate it. There was one event I attended on behalf of the mayor, and it was the Vanier Aspire to Action that this small group of Vanier students met at the Sid Williams to do a tour of the Sid Williams Theatre. And it was very educational. I toured with them for the majority of the tour and found I was learning many things myself about the Sid Williams. That was really neat. It was really nice to have this group there, and when in discussion with them what their goals are, their program was put together so they can actually create more awareness amongst young people just about the arts in general throughout our community and other communities. I guess would be doing this similar idea, but as in terms of creating awareness for whether it's music related, whether it's if you're doing a theater or just art in general. The one thing that they did mention as in terms of a big component of what they felt could make a difference is for youth, for instance, which is what this group was trying to inspire, was to have more youth relatable art, whether it's downtown or in our facilities, art that represents some of the challenges or some of the current trends that that young people are contending with on a day-to-day basis that they can actually identify with, and and I thought that was a really good recommendation. So yeah, that was quite a good little get together. So thanks, Mayor, for mentioning it to me and give me a chance to attend on your behalf.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Theos. Yeah, and I did change my my flight plan, so I wasn't able to attend, so I appreciate that. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks for your indulgence, Mayor. I did want to mention one other item. I had the opportunity to attend the opening of the Foundry Youth Services Project, which was an excellent event. But on the way home from that, as I was walking home, I got a message from a resident regarding concerns about issues on the railway corridor in the neighborhood close to where I live, near the Apple Tree Grocery in Barnes. And so walked up there to see what the concern was. And I happened to meet the person who runs Footprint Security, who was there doing a site visit to the railway station building. And he actually drove me around for a while, and I had the opportunity to talk with him. And it was actually really worthwhile because we tend to think of security people as perhaps somewhat brusque and not particularly engaging. And I found exactly the opposite with this individual. He talked about the importance in his approach of having a presence and building relationship with the people who are in the area. And it certainly gave me a lot more confidence in our ability to engage security from a proactive perspective to help with some of our issues in different parts of the community from time to time. So I just wanted to pass that on. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Councillor Hillian, for that and for attending the Foundry grand opening, which unfortunately I didn't get the invite until it was actually happening because I was on a plane. But I do appreciate that. And Councillor Theos, did you have more to add? Or are you all good? No, it's all good. I wasn't sure if we tweaked some other stuff, so I'll jump into it. So a couple of weeks ago, I attended the Chamber Mega Mixer. You sure? I'll let you go. Oh, okay. Fair enough. So the chamber had a great mixer put on, and again, people getting back out together. It was great to see so many people enjoying themselves. I attended the FCM conference center, and I would say a few of the highlights would be visiting the Friendship Center in Regina, which is, I think it was like a $45 million building, and how the city had come together with the First Nations and the school district and built this very innovative center. Also, the BC caucus meeting was quite interesting, and there was also a climate caucus meeting that was excellent as well. Although I missed the Foundry opening, I did stop by after I'd gotten changed and went down and was given a nice tour. And just really want to, for those that don't know what the Foundry is, it's really a state-of-the-art center of excellence for youth mental health. And so just really commend the province and the John Howard Society that's been providing these services for a long time. But I think really this ups the bar in terms of the level of service they can provide. I also called together, I don't even know what you call it, but it's basically a Ukrainian group. So with the different organizations in town that are sponsoring people, as well as the Immigration Welcome Center, our MLA, et cetera, as initial meeting just to see where the gaps are and where people can help each other. And so we're going to continue those meetings for the foreseeable future. Had a great meeting with KFN and talking about not just projects that we're working on, but I just want to give out a shout out to Janine, one of our staff members. In our previous KFN meeting, they taught us how we can introduce ourselves using their language, and she did that on her own, did a great job, and in fact that prompted me to send those instructions off to council as well, so that we're able to do that if the moments are appropriate. So really want to thank KFN for engaging, and then there was the developers meeting. We had a breakfast meeting on Friday. So that's the first time since the pandemic. We were meeting prior to that and had a great meeting again, I think. Great conversations with staff and developers, architects, et cetera, and really moving things forward. There was the Comox Valley Transition Society Golf Tournament on Friday that was sold out. Again, great event. My first time being the auctioneer for the live auction, but luckily I made it out alive, so had a good time. And then finally the Randy Witcher Plaza dedication, which having had the pleasure to work with Randy on various Rotary projects and being able to work with their family as our Rotary clubs had their son Tori off on Rotary Youth Exchange. It was great to see such an outpouring of support from our community to celebrate Randy's life. And with that, Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Councillor Cole Hamilton couldn't attend tonight, and he had proposed a resolution to come forward and asked if I would move that resolution. So it's regarding the Community Stitch Project. And it reads, whereas the Community Stitch Project uses handmade quilts and personal stories to create a powerful exhibit designed to increase awareness of and start conversations about gender-based violence, whereas the CSP, for short, would like to see the exhibit displayed in public spaces in our community to further the same. Therefore, it is resolved that Council directs staff to explore options for displaying the Community Stitch Project's quilts and supporting materials in prominent locations at city facilities. And I could just speak very briefly to.
Okay, that's been seconded by Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, so this was brought forward by Amy Crook, who's a counselor at the Transition Society, and she described that in working with people with trauma, that she envisioned this kind of idea to be stitching and doing something expressive arts and combining some discussion around it. So she went around to many different groups and got participation, and it resulted in hundreds probably of these beautiful squares that were stitched by all kinds of folks in the community, and the art gallery partnered to have a display. And Amy and Transition Society folks have been taking it around to a couple locations. So just hoping to broaden that awareness of this important issue in our community. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Councillor Moore, and appreciate bringing this forward. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. We've had a couple of things like this in the past. I remember the mural that was being displayed down by the air park in relation to the toxic drug crisis. I've recently been approached by an individual who has a large handmade quilting of the Comox Glacier that she wants to donate to one of the civic bodies in the area. And I don't know whether we have any sort of a policy or an approach to this that might be useful, given that this is coming up more often now. Be interested in any staff guidance in that regard. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Corbett.
Thank you through the mayor to council, and thank you for bringing forward Councillor Cole, or speaking to Councillor Cole Hamilton's resolution. We regularly deal with these type of requests. We don't have specific policy with respect to the Stitch project. I spoke to Mr. Rushton, and we can look for opportunities to display that. I would advise council that right now we have many things on our plate. With the next council, I think we, as these components of and there's a term that describes this type of craft and art making that is very important in particularly North America, where you weave arts and crafts, art, social issues together, and they're very powerful displays. And so I would endeavor that we can work on some policy as it relates to that, possibly set aside some display area. I personally was involved in trying to find a location for the witness blanket, which is an extremely large installation and was very difficult. In this case, the proposal in front of us, it's my understanding that we can work to accommodate that. So I guess long-winded response. I think the development of some policy to relate to these types of important art pieces and ability for the city to either display or facilitate that would be important. And that's some work that we would need to do with our next council.
All right, and so maybe to clarify, because the motion on the floor is specifically for this, but are you saying that it's better to have a policy prior to this?
Thank you. No, Mr. Mayor, we can accommodate this. I do know, though, this type of very important piece of community art, public art, folk art. There's many aspects to these things, and I don't suggest it's unprofessional art either. It's very professionally done. So I think it's something that we need to develop, and we have accommodated it and these kind of requests sort of on an ad hoc basis over the years. But it would probably be important for us to develop some guidance.
Excellent. All right, I appreciate that clarification. And so that being said, there's a motion on the floor. I don't see any further questions or comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And now we're on to Standard Park. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a motion whereas individuals camping on the riverbank accessed by a Standard Park have on numerous occasions presented a risk to their own safety and that of other park users. Be it resolved that council request a staff report with options to address issues related to homelessness and public safety at Standard Park. And if I could speak to it, Mr. Mayor, we've all, I expect, seen the correspondence from the homeowner nearby who's described the gradual deterioration of her quality of life related to people camping on that riverbank area. The concern that where in the past drunkenness might have been a concern, now it appears to be drug use that is accompanied by violence and behavior of other concerns. The homeowner expresses concerns not only for her own safety, but for that of other park users. And in some of her correspondence gives examples of confrontations that have occurred. The motion doesn't specifically note it, but I would expect that the staff report would address the possibility of actually closing off the riverbank access in that area, which is what has been requested. If there's a reason why we can't do that, then I think we need to be really clear about it. But I think we also have a responsibility to come up with some other strategies for addressing what's going on in that particular area, as we would with any other section of our community where somebody is vulnerable. I don't want to, I know there's a concern that we might be somehow labeling or targeting people, but I think we have a real public safety concern there that has required police attendance on numerous occasions. I know city staff, bylaw people have been there on a regular basis, and this goes back several years. So we now have the request from this particular homeowner to address the problem, and I'm hopeful that staff can come up with some solutions.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hillian. And I know, the toxic drug supply has been has had an impact as well on people's behavior. Councillor Morin.
Thanks, Mayor. Excuse me. I know that when Councillor Hillian and I were down on the Riverway that day, the bike patrol, RCMP bike patrol came by a couple times. And so it seems like they are along that pathway quite a bit. And I'm assuming that probably these incidents are happening, obviously, when they're not around or late in the night. So I was curious, I'm sure we do have some, I guess I just have a question about night security in our public parks or around our public parks. And if some of these particularly more volatile areas could be patrolled more if that's the case. Thanks.
Right, thanks very much for that. And Mr. Garbett.
Thank you. Through to Councillor Morin, we do have footprint security go. We do have a public washroom there that gets opened and closed in Standard Park, so we do have a presence there. I can say that I did join Councillor Hillian and with the resident and the mayor and I met the resident during the plant-in as well. So, longtime resident, great feedback there. It is a particularly challenging situation there. I agree. We need to look at some options. It's becoming a challenging location, and particularly just the nature of Standard Park and its interface with the natural boundary and the Courtney River comes up and down there, and it can be a real challenging situation. And also the invasive species that grow along the riverbank there have been pounded down by a number of people. It's obvious that area is attracting quite a bit of use, and our bylaw enforcement officers confirm that. So appreciate the referral, and we'll do some work and be clear what's reasonable and practical to do. And then I do agree having a dialogue about that and communicating out is important. So I appreciate that direction.
Thanks so much. And Councillor Elaine.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to emphasize that I think we've been flagged with a certain amount of urgency here, and I hope that we can quickly come up with some response and even perhaps take some interim measures that would provide for greater security. I think the risk here is that and I appreciate that situations come up from time to time where residents feel a particular threat to their personal safety, particularly when people feel vulnerable, whether they live alone or live in an isolated area or whatever. But I think in this particular case, we also have the danger that one of these individuals actually falls into the river and drowns. And I don't know what sort of liability the city maybe incurs in a situation like that. When adjacent to a park, we have a wooded area that is accessed through basically a gap in the fence that cuts down on visibility, where people feel like they can camp and indulge in all sorts of activities that aren't necessarily good for them or anybody else. So just some added comments. I appreciate Mr. Garbett's attention to this.
Excellent, thanks for that. And I know working with the BIA, they've got kind of a pamphlet or booklet that they can kind of lays out the folks that they can contact when there's issues going on. So that might be something that we share with the residents there, because we just give them a copy of that right away while we're doing the other work. So that being said, I don't see any further questions or comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Unfinished business. We have the Be Amazing campaign that Kathy Peters came and presented. And so I'm not sure if any councillors had any comments. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I think that it's safe to say that all of us deplore the activity that was presented to us, sex trafficking of children and trafficking of people in general. And we've had a couple of requests for actions to take in relation to this. We have given Ms. Peters a venue for promoting her views in public on numerous occasions, and I know that this is a crusade of hers that's ongoing. However, we've also recently received correspondence from an organization that raises some questions about the approach taken. And I think it's appropriate for us to look into that before endorsing the request that's made for us here today. So I would recommend that we defer this issue so that I would volunteer that Councillor Morin and myself would volunteer to have some discussion with staff about how we might explore the other viewpoints that are out there in relation to action on this issue, so that we might take a balanced approach that addresses all of the concerns that the community might have.
I appreciate that. And Councillor Morin, you're okay being part of the team? Excellent. I appreciate that. All right, I don't know that we need a motion for that necessarily.
Yeah, we could defer it indefinitely and just bring it back at some point.
Okay, so deferred indefinitely. Okay. I don't even think we vote on that then. All right, Lush Valley was asking for some funds, and I know we had some possibilities around that. I'm not sure if any councillors had a question, or Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, I wonder if staff are willing to come back with a report on how easy it would be to find this funding and a timeline for when they need it and such.
All right, you can turn your mic on. And then,
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Frisch. I mean, of course, we would take council's direction. Through the presentation, they provide an overview of their program. Council has provided $10,000 already to the organization this year. In the presentation themselves, they indicated that they did not need the funds in order to operate that program. Council does have their discretionary funds from gaming. Right now, there's $60,000 of the $75,000 remaining. Sorry, yeah, 60 of the $75,000. We've given 10,000 to Project Watershed for some access considerations at Kuskusum, and $5,000 to the KFN Guardians program. I would say that I know that there are a number of demands through the community as it relates to potentially for those discretionary funds from council, including our strategic priority around affordable housing. There's going to be some questions related to a number of the nonprofit developments that have happened. Now, we would, that's the details on how you can address that program. We haven't brought forward a report to council on sort of quantifying all of the in-kind contributions that we do provide to agencies and our valuable social service sector partners, Lush Comox Valley being one. We do have a long relationship of providing in-kind as well as financial contributions to them. So I mean, there is money available should council decide to provide that. At a staff level, I would, as we discussed during our financial planning program, it's a very tight year. We have a number of competing demands, and we had already provided some funds to that organization. So I guess I would just leave it at that. And if council gave us direction to do a staff report, we would of course do that. But there is background available for you in that regard.
Well, thank you for your candor, and Mayor, with that advice, I'll just let it lie for now. And if council discusses to do something different, I'm happy to move forward at that time. Thanks.
all right, and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. My recollection is that staff did provide us with a potential resolution last meeting when this was deferred. If we wanted to move forward with it, I'm generally in support of helping Lush out, but maybe not to the extent that they're requesting, given the other contributions that we already make, and the fact that I know of at least one other request that's going to come for this funding this year, and Mr. Garbetz indicated that there may be more. But I wonder if council might agree to supporting them to the tune of $10,000, which is a third of what they're requesting on this particular occasion. I'd be prepared to move that if there was support at the table, and I know that this comes out of discretionary funds from the gaming account, and so it's basically council's discretion. So perhaps I'll move that to get it on the table that council allocate $10,000 from discretionary gaming funds to Lush Valley.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Councillor Warren.
Yeah, I support this. You know, I was hoping that we would be able to find that full amount, just because the point was made really clear that, you know, 81% of the people that the boxes go to are residents of Courtenay. And I know that we can't help everybody, but food security has come in addition to the mental health challenges and some of our, you know, downtown issues. This would, to me, food security would be probably the number two or most important issue that we've been dealing with. And I know that there's not a lot of support coming from other areas. So I definitely support this and wish that we could actually approve more. Thanks.
And Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I've been very conflicted about this request because I absolutely am so impressed with the work that Lush Valley does in our community, and I know how effective they are in reaching people that really need this support and addressing food security in our community. But we gave them a substantial donation last year, and we have ongoing funding that does get allocated through gaming. And it concerns me just the quantity of funds that we're delivering kind of on a one-off basis with these discretionary funds. That in my mind, it would be, if it's council's desire to provide more support to Lush Valley, it would probably make more sense to look at that at strategic planning and look at the amount that we are currently giving them on an ongoing basis out of gaming, rather than getting these requests through a delegation, just because, you know, it's hard to say no when you know what the need is. And, you know, we do have so many needs in this community, and we have a really good working relationship with Lush Valley that there is open communication there for ongoing funding requests. And I think there's probably a better way to go about it. So I appreciate this suggestion of maybe a smaller amount to meet some of their need while still holding on to more of our discretionary money for other requests that we'll inevitably receive before the end of the year is up. So I'm supportive of the 10,000. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCollum. And yeah, knowing what a great job that they do, how effective they are with the funds they do receive, you know, that definitely gets them to deserve something. And one of the conversations that came up at FCM again, which is kind of looming across the country, is RCMP costs and in fact retroactive costs. So those are unknown potential costs coming down the pipe too. So, but I think $10,000 really is a balanced decision to say that, you know, we know they're doing good, but we're still going to keep some money in case there's other organizations or other needs that the community has for those funds. That being said, I don't see any further questions or comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And new business. So I know I asked the question earlier and there was no new business because I forgot that I had new business. And so what we're going to do is our clerk is going to, I think, bring up the motion. Is that how it's going to go? Oh, to the screen. You got it. So I'll explain it.
Sorry, I don't have it.
I emailed it to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, but you don't have it on your laptop.
Sorry.
Okay, I can.
Yeah, sure. I'll do a little bit of an intro. So one of the organizations that I sit on with other municipalities is the Island Coastal Economic Trust, ICE-T. And one of the things when it was created, it was given a certain amount of money, about $50 million, and basically set up as a sinking fund so that those funds would be used for economic development throughout the communities on Vancouver Island as well as the Sunshine Coast. We're basically 2 years from running out of funds, which means basically the fund would close down. And so what we're working on at the ICE-T board is a recapitalization plan. And so what's been requested, and I do chair the our local North Island committee, is that we put forward a motion to go to UBCM to get the attention of the province to recapitalize. So it's really just trying to go to the province from all avenues that are possible. And the challenge is that UBCM has a deadline, which is the end of this month. So Brody Guy, the new director of executive director of ICE-T, drafted this motion, and basically it's got the support of the board as well as the committees to put this forward. So the recapitalization amount, so the original amount given was $50 million. A few years ago, an extra $10 million was reinvested basically to keep the doors open for a few years, but now that's depleted as well. So we're asking for $250 million recapitalization, which if you compare that with the northern province, central interior, et cetera, it's still nowhere near per capita what the other trusts in the province get. So we're just really trying to get to a point where we can have a perpetual fund where we're not actually a sinking fund, but we can actually set it up so that it can be used in perpetuity, if that makes sense. So that's the idea. And I know I'm drawing this out so that it's a moving target. No, it's all good. Mr. Carpet, I'll pass it over to you.
Through the mayor, I just forwarded on to council the resolution that Mr. Brody, Mr. Guy had provided on to us, and I can read it out. Adriana's madly typing away here. Whereas the Island Coastal Economic Trust will initiate its dissolution in 2023, and that local governments and First Nations across the Vancouver Island, Sunshine Coast, and surrounding rural islands and inlet communities face immeasurable economic challenges with a need for locally accountable, self-determined finance. Therefore, be it resolved that UBCM formally request the provincial government make a generational investment in the renewal and transformation of Island Coastal Economic Trust into a permanent ESG-focused, First Nations and local government-led fund focused on building sustainable, resilient communities for generations to come. So the mayor's provided a little bit of a background. Unfortunately, just with the timing, it's been very difficult for the new executive director to start to reach out past just the Island Coastal Economic Trust Board and the RAC, or the Regional Advisory Committee in the North End. I have been speaking with our 4 CAOs in the Comox Valley, including the intergovernmental director for Comox First Nation as well about this. And it's anticipated these are the kind of resolutions that regions make, and they result in things like the Fair Share Agreement, the Northern Development Initiative, et cetera. And I do know that in meeting the new executive director, he's quite an impressive person, has worked, I think, with all of those trusts. So I think we're getting close. Adriana, very impressive. So I did circulate that to council, and I don't know if you're just in your email. I don't know if you're able to pull it up.
Thanks so much for that, Mr. Garbutt and Adriana. Thanks so much for trying to catch up with how our brains are somewhat working. Yeah, I think one of the things also that we're really working towards, well, one thing is that our trust has also expanded in size. It's been including actually our premier's riding. And not only that, but if we look to how our community has benefited, the parklet that's going in on 4th Street, that's through an ICE-T fund. But if we look at how it's impacted First Nations across our area, many projects have been put together through ICE-T funding. And at the end of the day, one of the strange anomalies is that First Nations to this point have not been able to be participants, and that's what we want to change. Although they can get grant funding, we want them to actually be able to be part of the ICE-T decision-making process. So, Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm fine with moving this, but I just want to be clear: is this us asking UBCM to do something? Is that the intent of the resolution?
Yeah, so if we go to the therefore portion of it, it's basically that UBCM formally requests the provincial government to make a generational investment.
But we're passing this motion and forwarding it on to UBCM.
Yes.
Okay, and are there other councils being asked to do this as well, or is this a Courtney effort?
It's just going to be a Courtney effort, although again, all of the mayors that were part of the meeting on Friday are in support of it as the board meeting as well.
Right.
So
moved.
Thank you. All right. It's just Brody lives in the Comox Valley, so proximity and we had lunch with, I've met with him many times, and as Jeff's probably communicated with him even more. So it was more just convenience and then realizing that deadline. And just on Friday, Brody was very clear that he does apologize. He's only been in the role for a month, so he's really trying to get caught up, not just on becoming the new executive director, but also looking at what things need to be done so that the organization as a whole, really doesn't have to close down in a year or two, but can actually, again, have that generational impact as the other trusts do across the province. So I do appreciate that being moved. I apologize. I didn't, it got seconded, I think. Yeah. So that being said, if there's any questions, happy to answer as best I can. Seeing none, Councillor. Okay. And again, my apologies that this came at such a late notice. But that being said, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And I do appreciate again, Council, for indulging this, and especially the staff, Mr. Garbett, who's been working diligently with Brody Guy, and then Adriana, who had to get that motion rocking and rolling tonight. So it is much appreciated. That being said, Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. If you're ready, moving on to the bylaws. I'll move that based on the June 13th, 2022 staff report, housing agreement bylaw number 3064 for 801 Ryan Road, that council proceed with option 1 and give first, second, and third reading to the bylaw number 3064.
It's been seconded. Are there any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And for adoption, Councillor Frisch.
I'll move that council adopt election bylaw number 3073.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments regarding the election bylaw number 3073? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And thanks everybody for all your efforts tonight, and we are adjourned.